And I got it after ailing from meningitis. Yeah, so after that, after ailing from meningitis, when I recovered, I'd already lost my hearing and I grew up that way. And I thank God. I want to teach you a bit of sign language. From these handbooks, yeah. It's very important for all of us to learn sign language. All people, including the hearing people and the deaf, it aids us in communication, mainly with the deaf people. Maybe it may be in school, in churches, family, maybe parents communicating with their children. It's important to learn basic sign language. And it's for us to, at least when you're communicating, because most of the time the deaf people don't give feedback during a communication, but with sign language, when all of us do it together, we'll communicate. So I'll start with greetings. How to greet the deaf, how greetings are done in sign language. That's hello, 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 copy, hello. That's hello, hello, A-L-L-O, hello. Yeah, like so when the deaf meet, they'll always be like, hello, and they'll be happy, they'll be very excited when they see you greeting them, because now they see now you're engaging them in the conversation. So that's hello. Another one is good morning. Good morning. Hope you can see me. People at the back, can you see me? Yeah? Okay. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Yes, good morning. Yeah. I'm sure I hope you've understood those two, hello and good morning. Yeah, and I'm sure now we are continuing well. How are you? Copy. Because we use Kenyan Sign Language, we ignore the R, because when you're saying we do how are you, so the verb are, we don't use it, so we just do in Kenyan Sign Language, how are you? That's in the usual English. But in Kenyan Sign Language, it is you how are you? Ukoaje? You how? You how? No, because now we're using Kenyan Sign Language, it's you how. Yeah, the deaf may be in your friend, will be like, when they're responding, they will be like, I'm fine. That's a sign for fine. In usual English, it is, I am fine. But in Kenyan Sign Language, we shorten it and it becomes, me fine. Copy that, me fine. I am well, or I am well. I am well. But in Kenyan Sign Language, it is well, me well. Yes, okay? Yeah, no, so far, yeah. So if you say I'm good, you can say I'm good. Many people when they're learning, so who haven't learned sign language, who hasn't learned basic sign language like the alphabet? How many of you haven't ever tested the sign language or even tried it? How many haven't learned sign language? How many? So like the ones who haven't lifted up their hands, it shows that you know the alphabet well. Do you? You know the alphabet? Okay. So together, we can do it together. You can learn together with A and from A to Z, okay? Is that okay? That's fine. Okay. Let's start together. A. B. C. D. Copy. D. Okay, raise your index finger. Help your neighbor in case they are stuck or in case they are confused. Observe what your neighbor is doing. D. That's letter D. Good. E. It's not hard, it's simple. Make sure your fingers are flexible. Yeah, don't try and make them firm. So it's D. That's E. So that's E. You can help your neighbor, E. Don't stiffen your fingers. Let them relax, yes? Relax your fingers, and now you can do E. That's a sign for E. Okay, if you're right-handed, use your right hand. If you're left-handed, you can use your left hand. You don't have to keep on changing A on the right, B on the left, no. You can choose one. Your dominant hand, you can use it. Stay with it. So if it's A, B, C, D, continue with that hand. If you're left-handed, use the left hand, okay? But don't try using both, no. You can choose your dominant hand and use it. So that's E, F, F, G, G. Please help your neighbors, teach one another, yeah? Don't leave them or laugh at them, no. Assist them in case they are stuck, yeah? Help them, okay? So we are at G, G, observe your neighbor, G, H, 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 I, J, K, make sure, observe where the thumb is located and place it there between the two fingers. K, yes, good. L, L, M, M, M. Always be keen on where the thumb is located. M. Please help one another, kindly. Help your neighbors in case they are stuck. Observe their hands and see if they're articulating it correctly. Letter N, N, M, N. O, O, P, 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 P. P. Are you comfortable with P? Q, 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 R, R, S, S, T, 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 T. Look at the it's articulated. T, 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 U, U, V, W, X, Y, Y. It's the thumb and the little finger that are raised, the others are folded. Y, Z. Okay? Now, I want to see if you remember A to Z. Who can come here? Who's going to volunteer and come and sign? Karibu. Hello. My name is Okay, I'll spell as it comes. My name is S-C-O-L-A, scholar. Z-N Nzula, scholar Nzula. Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M O P Q R S T U V W X X Y Z. Thank you. Please appreciate her. Don't clap. Just do. Thank you. I'm sure you've seen that she's learned really fast. Yeah. How do you feel about that? Yeah. I'm sure it was interesting, isn't it? Yes. Thank you. Now I want to give the program back to the MC for him to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilson. I have learned a few things myself. I can't say I'm very conversant in sign language, but I appreciate the good work that is happening just to ensure that it's inclusive, especially for those of us who are learning the language. So let's appreciate Wilson once more. Thank you. To begin, we would like to just usher this meeting in the presence of the Lord. We'll begin by prayer, and then we shall proceed with the program. So I'll kindly request our brother at the back there to just give us an opening prayer, and then we can begin.
Okay. Let's believe and pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning. We thank you for the gift of life. Lord Father, you've led us to this place safely, and we want to appreciate you for that, because you're the Most High. Lord Father, as we begin this meeting, we bring ourselves before you. Lord, we ask for your guidance and protection, Father. Whatever we are going to discuss, Father, let it be of benefit to our community members and as a country as a whole. We ask those ones on the way coming, Father, give them journey mercies and protect them. Thank you, Lord, for the day. And I pray this, trusting in your name. Amen.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very important to just give thanks to the Lord for the gift of life and for the different talents that we have in everything that we do. So once again, I would like to welcome you to this day. I'd like to welcome you to KISE. I'd like to welcome you to SLEEK. And I want to appreciate each and every one of you making the choice to be here this morning. I'm sure there were many other important meetings that you had prepared for the day, or very important errands you had to run, but you chose to be here. So there, I think you can even appreciate yourself. It's an honor. I would also like to appreciate the different associations represented here, different people, and even students. It's not every day that people come together to listen, discuss, interact, especially on matter sign language. So this is a good day, a great day that the Lord has made. Then I would like also to appreciate KISE for giving us an opportunity to have this function in their premises. KISE is a friend to SLEEK, and they have supported us in this important way. KISE, as you know, is the Kenya Institute of Special Education, and they do a lot here, and they offer different courses to ensure that the special needs persons are able to be part of life and just use their talents in a way that can be productive to them as well. Then I would also like to appreciate the presence of Communication Authority of Kenya as well. They are partners with SLIC. They have done so much, enough milestones in supporting matters on sign language. So we really appreciate their presence here as well. And I'll also there's a representative from the High Commission of India who's here with us today. We really appreciate your presence. And everyone else as well, members of SLIC, friends of SLIC, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's function. So to begin with, I just want to again apologize for the time. I know that we had hoped to begin at 8:30, but we'll try as much as possible to end the function within the stipulated time, which was around 1 p.m. This afternoon. Simple kitchen housekeeping, sorry. We have the washrooms, so if you can, there's a door at the back of the room, my right. The washrooms are towards the left. So we have the ladies and also the gents. So don't feel pressured. If you need to step out, kindly just identify that the washrooms are there. And then I also strongly ask us to interact. Don't be seated with the person that you came with. You can imagine all these new faces, all these new people, lovely ladies and gentlemen. So just get time and engage a bit. Wilson has taught us one or two, in fact, the entire alphabet. So we can also try and engage with each other. So I think first things first. We'd like to just recognize our hosts. And our hosts who are KISE. In fact, there's a fine gentleman who has just walked in. We were just trying to recognize your presence, Daniel Hwaga. We really appreciate that you've given us an opportunity to be here this morning to embrace inclusivity through sign language for all. And that is the theme of our day today. I'll be as slow as I possibly can. It's the inaugural forum. It's titled Embracing Inclusivity Through Sign Language for All. Yeah, if you can repeat after me, just for emphasis. Embracing inclusivity through sign language for all. Yeah? Does it sound like an amazing theme? Yeah? Okay. Now, I'd just like to introduce a very important person. He's here with us this morning. He's taken the time, actually. He's quite a busy man, and he's a man who he wears many caps. I've just had a brief discussion with him. I'm impressed by him. He's a lecturer here at KISE. He's a deaf educationist. He's been at KISE for about 13 years now, if I'm not wrong. He heads the Department of Hearing, Impairment and Communication Difficulties, where sign language falls. Then he's here representing the director of KISE in his capacity. So we are well represented. One thing that I'm amazed by him, I had not heard of this word before today. He's an audiologist. I don't know if this is in sign. Audiologist. Yes. So an audiologist is a person who assesses functioning of the ear and makes prescriptions for assisting this prescription for assistive devices, if I'm correct. So you can see this is a great man, and he has been working for the last 23 years in education, especially with the deaf, across the country. So KISE, you're blessed to have this man. So, ladies and gentlemen, without far much ado, I would like to just welcome and recognize the presence of Daniel Hwaga. Yeah, Daniel Hwaga. Just kindly, if you could stand up and so that we can see. Let's appreciate him. And you have to recognize that he has a very beautiful tie. I have some competition. Welcome.
Okay. Good morning. Oh, I have an interpreter. So I cannot talk and interpret the same time. Oh, good morning. It is a great day because of sign language. Sign language. Sign language is cool. Sign language is beautiful. Sign language enhances us to communicate. It has brought us together for the day. And more so, God is good. And all the time, and that is his nature. We are today hosting the sign language day celebrations, which goes by embracing sign language for inclusivity. Okay? In an institution that has got history of special needs education, the first one in Kenya, East Africa, East and Central Africa, and Africa south of Sahara. This is KISE, north of Limpopo, because there's only another UNISE there's another one in South Africa, which we are running at par, so north of Limpopo. The rest, we are ahead of them. But even the one in South Africa, now with this facility, which has just, we are in today, I think now we are ahead of the one in South Africa. And in that way, when we talk of sign language, there's a long history in sign language. And when I heard Professor Ndurumo is coming, that is one great person that I admire as an educator. I've been teaching the deaf for the last I've been engaged in education of the deaf for the last 23 years, starting right from primary, technical school, secondary, and now at lecturing. I've also lectured in the universities. I'm also a curriculum developer, and I've been developing for so many courses. Even now in CBC, I'm there. Niko ndani kabisa, CBC, to fight for the rights of the deaf. You get it? And to see whether sign language must have its place correctly in the curriculum. That one, I'm one of the people who are in that panel. Right, today in the morning I was, fortunately we were also having another meeting, and the person in charge of curriculum development for the hearing impairment at KICD is right here in KISE, but she's attending another forum. So we were sharing about sign language with the new act, so that we see what we can do the way forward. So it is a great day, and sign language, as a lecturer, I've been encouraging many of my students. Right now I've got 100 students across that I was even requesting for this handbook, so that they are across, they are in class. But I normally tell them one thing: sign language is still a growing language, just like Sheng. Because the history dates back to 1770, which century is that? 1770 something, that is 18th century. One great person called Abe Charles de Lepe. That is one great, that's the person we would normally refer to as the father of sign language, as we have it today in Kenya. He was the first educator of sign language and a trainer. He trained somebody called Gallaudet, who heard about him. This Gallaudet, after acquiring skills, he went and started the education in America. Then there was this controversy. People said deaf should not be taught sign language, nini. It ended up in Milan conference, and the people were advocating that the deaf should be taught what? To speak only. That means they were taking deafness deafness as a language to be a medical condition, isn't it? Unlike a communication. But through the great efforts of Gallaudet, he started the first institution in America. And then one of our Kenyan people, two great Kenyans. One was a lecturer here, he retired, Mr. Bakari, and our Professor Ndurumo went to that university called Gallaudet. It was the first university in the world for the deaf. You see, now it grew to that level. Then through Ndurumo, he came and started advocating for sign language to be used in schools. So that is one person that we attribute the history of sign language in Kenya. He fought, we started piloting in the schools just the other year in 1980-something there with Machakos and some schools. Now, sign language has gained about 4 major what achievements. One, it is entrenched in the Constitution, isn't it? The latest one, we are having an act, you get it, which is going to push it forward. Second one, it is entrenched in the Constitution as the third language. Then fourth one, now it is a subject, recognized, examined with its own patterns, being developed from primary. Even the grade 3s, they are having theirs. The other ones, they did their exams, maybe in one way or the other. It will go up to university. It has become a profession now. You see the ladies in pink and the man in blue. And now it is, as a language, it is, because it is growing, it is going to be very wide, because there are so many vocabularies we are still missing. Don't think that vocabularies are complete. This is an area where there's still need for research, bringing the deaf. It is to do, this morning I was impressed when you were saying, you find, you how, you get it? That vocabulary and the way it's supposed to be articulated in Kenyan Sign Language. Because from what you were saying, you are, fine. We have to borrow many signs to incorporate it. But now, the way forward, we are going to streamline it so that it is purely Kenyan Sign Language. And there's also a debate, we were in a conference, that it is not a written language, but it is a gestural language signed in a space. I think the description is there. If you have read, you are signed in space. That means it's not permanent. But you can write using finger spelling. That is where I normally, you can finger spell, isn't it? But in space. I hope my colleague, I take him to be, I was here briefly when he was finger spelling and trying to teach us. Otherwise, it is my honor and a pleasure, because it's the opportunity I've taken to talk. I can, with sign language, we can talk until evening. And next time you give me a forum to talk for 2 hours. If you invite me, I can talk for 2 hours. There is a lot we can discuss in sign language. Otherwise, on behalf of Director KISE, Mutiso T. Wambua, HSC, I'm grateful for him offering me an opportunity to preside over the first ever ceremony of Kenyan Sign Language in this great institute, to represent him, and I'm so much humbled. And on his behalf, I welcome all of you. I wish you will enjoy the facilities, because this KISE is meant for such forums. And on his behalf, I declare the forum open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And let's appreciate Bwana Hwaga. He has unveiled the very first forum. So it's an honor that everyone in our presence this morning is a witness to what will have happened here. And I know this is the beginning of many other forums. And thank you very much, KISE. We hope that we continue this partnership in future to ensure that the good work that you're doing is also included to those who need it most. And sometimes it's those who are able. For me, sign language is needed also by those who are able to communicate through speech. So thank you very much, sir. And I think we have a few more hours, so please feel free to stay here. I'm sure there will be questions from the plenary, right? So if there are any critical questions that need to be asked, 23 years of experience in teaching the deaf across the country. So this is a lot of experience and wisdom in one man. And with SLIC, I'd like to also mention that we don't work alone. SLIC has a vision, is a trendsetter and a catalyst of inclusivity through communication. Okay? So, and communication is a key part of anything that we do. Anything that we do. I don't think we can be able to relate if we don't communicate. I don't think we can be social beings if we do not communicate. In that respect, I would like to invite one of our key partners as well, the Communication Authority of Kenya. I would like to invite this fine gentleman, Mr. Paul Kiage. Let's appreciate Mr. Paul Kiage as he comes forth. Mr. Paul Kiage, he's here representing the DG from the Communication Authority of Kenya. And he's the Assistant Director in charge of the Universal Service Fund. So I would like to just ask him to deliver the speech or whatever that they had prepared from the Communication Authority of Kenya. So let's welcome him with a round of appreciation. Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning. As been said by the MC, my name is Paul Kiage. I work for the Communications Authority of Kenya. And many of you could be asking, who is this animal called Communications Authority of Kenya? We are the licensing agency for telecommunication, postal, and courier, including broadcasting services in the country. So we are the regulator for ICT industry. We are a government agency with offices along Wayaki Way as you head towards Kangemi, just past Safaricom offices, directly opposite Kianda School. We report to the Ministry of Information, Communications and Technology. And as rightly been said, that sign language is a way of communication. So I think you fall under the ambit of the Communications Authority. I'm here to represent the Director General of the Communications Authority. She's a lady by the name Mercy Wanjau. She would have wished to be with you on this particular occasion, but she's representing the government in another meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. So she was not able to be here this morning. So she has given me some remarks, and my work is easy, just to review and read, but I would wish to maybe recognize the presence of the dignitaries who are represented here. I'm told we have the representative from the Indian High Commission. We also have the representative of the director of KISE, Mr. Daniel Hwaga. So we really appreciate the opportunity to host us here this morning. So ladies and gentlemen, I wish to request you that I relay Madam Mercy's speech. Good morning. The Communications Authority of Kenya is delighted to be part of this forum under the theme Embracing Inclusivity Through Sign Language, which is in line with this year's theme for International Day of Sign Language, which is Sign Language Rights for All. The theme of the forum evokes in each of us the need to take concrete actions to enrich the lives of persons living with disabilities. It is also gratifying that sign language is cool, and the Kenya Institute of Education, KISE, together with other partners, have joined hands to organize this event that calls out on key stakeholders to enhance initiatives to support persons living with disabilities, and specifically mainstreaming of sign language. This event also serves as a constant reminder to all of us gathered here, we still got some work to do in enhancing our understanding and appreciation of the interests of Kenyans with special needs. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in an era that is driven by a progressive constitution that provides for a raft of rights that citizens enjoy, as well as elimination of all forms of discrimination. It is on this premise that, as the ICT sector regulator, the authority has an obligation to enhance widespread access to communication services by all in Kenya. PWDs, by their very nature, find themselves marginalized in accessing communication services, and as such, we are tasked to specifically come up with interventions to improve on accessibility to ICT services. Allow me at this stage to share with you what we have done in the past in order to ensure that PWDs are not left out of the digital revolution. The authority was instrumental in implementing projects to facilitate access and build capacities in ICTs for PWDs. As a result, CA established ICT centers within 7 secondary schools and 1 technical institute for PWD across the country. These are Machakos Technical Institute for Blind in Machakos, St. Lucie School for the Blind in Meru, Kibo Special School for Visually Impaired in Kisumu, Thika High School for the Blind in Kiambu, Reverend Muhoro School for the Deaf in Murang'a, I think it's in Nyeri if I'm not wrong, then Kuja School for the Deaf in Migori. There is also Mombasa Secondary School for the Physically Disabled in Mombasa, and the Joyland Special School for the Physically Disabled in Kisumu County. It is worth mentioning that through these projects, we enabled students, teachers, and non-teaching staff to access computers through the use of assistive devices and softwares, such as job access with the speech JAWS and screen magnifiers that enabled people with special needs to access and use ICTs. In addition, the authority supported the National Council for Persons with Disabilities to create a portal where PWDs could access relevant information, including searching for job opportunities. The project greatly improved the adoption of ICTs in the management and administrative functions, including records keeping and maintenance, as well as communication and registration of students with special needs to undertake national exams. With availability of internet, teachers were able to access information and conduct online research that enhanced learning for students. Additionally, the centers provided an opportunity to teachers to develop their professional skills through online courses and facilitation of research for graduate and postgraduate students. The authority is therefore proud that through availing ICTs to PWDs, we have contributed to narrowing of the information divide among the marginalized groups, besides enriching the lives of local communities at the beneficiary institution. This initiative boosted the confidence levels to students in the beneficiary institutions besides providing a fair and equal chance for all in pursuit of their careers in ICTs. I wish to also delve in other areas that the authority has, in addition to connecting the 8,500 plus public secondary schools in Kenya in the coming years. The availability of these services to the general populace have indeed transformed lives of people, including PWDs. In the broadcasting subsector, the authority identified the need to ensure that people with hearing impairment can still enjoy their television viewing experience. That's why we have developed the programming code for broadcasting in Kenya that provides standards for the time and manner of programming to be aired both for TV and radio broadcasting services in Kenya. One of the specific provisions of this code of practice is accessibility to broadcasting services for PWDs. Broadcasters are therefore expected to take specific steps to promote understanding and enjoyment of programs by PWDs. These requirements include airing programs that improve the general welfare and well-being of PWDs. Broadcasters are also required to include closed captioning or subtitling. I don't know whether you've been watching news and you see some things appearing under the TV. Those are what we are referring to. And this inserts during news and current affairs programs, emergency announcements during disasters, and also including during public or national holidays. The authority is under obligations to review these requirements from time to time to ensure continually expand the scope of initiatives that can add value to the lives of PWDs. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by indicating that the authority continues to take keen interest on issues affecting PWDs and is in the front line of integrating such needs within its operational ecosystem. That's why we have in place a gender and disability mainstreaming policy that provides for a broad framework on how we can continually make CA is our abbreviation for Communications Authority, as a public institution that is responsive and friendly to PWDs. This has seen the authority facilitate a number of staff to attend sign language training to ensure that they are better placed to interact with PWDs, especially those with hearing impairment. The authority has also taken deliberate efforts in providing employment and internship opportunities to people with various forms of disabilities. However, this is a responsibility we cannot achieve alone, and we believe through continued engagement in forums such as this, we can share experiences and make us a better institution. I wish to once again express our sincere gratitude to the Sign Language School, SLIC Hub, and the Kenya Institute of Special Education, KISE, for making us part of this important discourse. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think I'm humbled to just learn of what CA, the Communications Authority, is doing in Kenya, especially for inclusivity and also people living with disabilities. This is amazing. I think they are probably a benchmark in organizations as well, in terms of inclusivity, the policies that you have also put in place, and the championing of most of these policies. I think as well as partnering with the SLIC Hub, I'm just hoping that this continues. We really appreciate your presence here this morning and that speech and commitment from the Director General herself. So I believe that without communication, most of the things that we want to put across cannot be said well. And in that light, I would like to just introduce a very special person to us. Before I do so, I would just like to ask someone who can be able to, in sign language, say like, or demonstrate the word, sign language is cool. Any volunteer from the plenary, from the crowd? Sign language, yes, there's a lady here. Kindly just come ahead. Let's appreciate her. Sign language is cool. Okay, let's appreciate her. That's very, very good. Any other attempt? Female plenaries are encouraged to participate. Yes, there is a hand at the back. Kindly move forward so that we can all see you. Let's encourage her as she approaches. Okay. Should she repeat? Okay. Is that good? Okay. Any final attempt? Any final attempt? Not from you. I think we have enjoyed your participation. Yes. For the sake of gender balance, we'll have this fine gentleman. Let's appreciate him also as he comes forward. Oh, okay, let's appreciate him. Thank you very much, sir. I think all of these attempts are correct, okay? All of these attempts are correct. One thing I learned about adult learning is that all answers are correct, right? Yeah, all answers are correct. And I would really want to take this moment to appreciate this one person. I think she is the reason why we are all seated here or standing here. She's been a champion of sign language for a very long time, ever since I knew her. I personally known her for over 10 years, basically. Actually, about 13 years now. And I've seen her grow into this passion that she had and was very, very committed. She's a vision bearer of SLEEK. Vision bearer meaning she woke up one fine morning with this vision and dream that she's going to ensure that there's inclusivity of sign language, not only in this country, but also globally. She's a communication specialist as well. She's also a protocol, I will say, specialist as well. Protocol meaning she makes things move in order of how they should be. And she's the, and I say the mother figure, I guess, for SLEEK. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Diana Kamau Njoroge, Diana Wamboi Kamau. Yes, I interchange these names depending on which hat I am holding. But today I'd like to introduce her to you. She's the vision bearer. So, ladies and gentlemen, kindly help me just appreciate Diana as she comes forth to give her opening remarks. Karibu.
Afternoon. Not yet. I've been introduced big. Wow. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, the hall is full. I'm sure there's so many people who have seen the name Diana, but they can't be able to put a face to Diana, isn't it? So this is Diana. My sign name is Diana, or Wamboi, whichever it is that you would want to use. Reason, I was told I have dimples. Do you see them from there? I was told I have small dimples here, so I was given these. And I think I like them. They make me look good, isn't it? For those that are seeing them. So if you want to see them, get closer to me. Yeah, I've been introduced so big. I thank God for today. It's actually a day that I really looked forward to. This is a journey for 10 years, you can imagine. And this is the first time we are holding an inaugural forum, you know? And I'm very proud that it's the first that has happened in KISE also. I'm very proud and I'm very happy to partner with KISE. We carry the same vision of inclusivity and of, you know, of special needs. And I've been introduced as a communicator. I'm a communicator, yes, and a protocol specialist. But the reason as to why we are here is communication. So for me, and the reason as to why SLIC was formed is because God put some burden in my heart. Just as a communicator, I'll give you a history of how I got into sign language. I got into sign language like 10 years ago. And the reason as to why is because as I was walking to town, I used to find these men, you know them where they usually are. Kencom, Ambassador, you know them, eh? Where they're usually in CBD. And I could go stand there. Now you can imagine me, I'm walking, I'm crossing the road, and instead of going where I'm going, I'm standing. Now observing them, what they are doing. And then I was like, how would I break? I want to understand what it is that they are talking about. Because I could see them do stuff. No, at that time it was stuff. I know how to sign, by the way. So I could see them do some stuff, and I'm thinking, oh, what is this that they are saying? Could they be like Sengenyaing me? No, who is not? I know there are people that do not know Sengenya, but Sengenya is like gossiping. You know, are they gossiping me or what is happening? So I got interested, and believe you me, in a month's time, I had looked for a school, I enrolled, I finished, I was the best in our class. Who knows Meresha? And Meresha is not here. Meresha, I know there are people who know Meresha. Yeah, Meresha is an interpreter at KT, and we used to compete with Meresha. But for me was not per se the interpretation angle. It was for communication purposes. Okay? So that's where now SLIC was born. That was a small seed that grew. And sign language is school. Most of the people think is school, like shule. It's not a school, though it's a school by itself, but it's a cool language. The reason as to why it's a cool language is because we are concentrating on the sign language being a communication, how would I call it? A communication aspect or component within the disability world. So SLIC Hub is the organization. Let me actually explain this. SLIC Hub is the organization. Okay? Sign Language is Cool is a campaign which falls under SLIC Hub. So what SLIC Hub does, we concentrate on communications angles within the disability world. Who would know the other, apart from sign language? In the disability world, what other communication aspects do we have? Yes? Sorry? Yes. We have which other one? Braille. Another one, and I'm a trainer, by the way, so I need cooperation, need participation, so that I'm encouraged. We have Braille, any other form of communication within the disability world? Yes? Yeah. That lady, I think, there's another one there who is trying to writing. Yes, writing is also a form of communication, isn't it? Just like our MC, our moderator, was saying, we can't do anything without communication. You would not be here if it were not for communication. So communication is very key in our day-to-day life. And sign language per se is a language that we were first introduced from when we were babies. People don't understand that. But we first got to understand the sign language. However, we used to sign, but we used to communicate, isn't it? Only that this time round is Kenya Sign Language, which now most of us get to know, and we are able to communicate in a larger group, isn't it? So now, as I continue, and I talk much, I'm like Mr. Hwaga. I can be given 2 hours, and there will still not be enough. But I'll try and shorten it. Now, we are here because we are embracing sign language or inclusivity through sign language. What does that mean? As we are recognizing the International Day of Sign Language, who was at our function yesterday? The national function. A book clap for yourselves. We happen to be in the steering committee, and we are happy that it went the way it went. It went well, isn't it? You are happy about it, eh? Okay, so now, the theme for this year was that sign language is a right for all. For me, the meaning of is a right for all is not all deaf. No. And by the way, there are those that would think I'm saying the word deaf, and they're thinking, this lady is very insensitive, isn't it? They're the ones who have never interacted with there are those who has ever interacted with the deaf community or culture? Who has not? Hands up, so that I give you a few tips. No one is raising up their hand. Now, let me just say, now, in the deaf community, we actually had this conversation. They do not like being told that they are hearing impaired. Am I right? They just want to be told they're just deaf. Stop putting other decorations in it. They're just that. And they like it that way. And that's why I embraced it. So I call them my deaf friends, my deaf, I use that name. So it's not insensitivity. I'm a communicator, so I'm also very sensitive on how I communicate. So that's an explanation for it. So the rights for all, for us, is not a right for all for the deaf. It's a right for all of us. The language is not only for the deaf. It's for all of us to get to learn. My question usually is, and my desire is that if only we would pick sign language, just like any other language. We go to Alliance Française to learn French, isn't it? Are we sure whether we'll go to France when we are learning French? Why are you even learning French? For communication, because probably at some point you want to go to Paris, for example, and you do not want to encounter any barriers, isn't it? I always give an example of Paris because I've been there before. And the time I went there, the only language I knew is bonjour. Yeah, bonjour, that and full stop. Let's just do that. It was bonjour, full stop. Then it got to a point, we got lost. We were 2 of us, my friend and I. We got lost. Now you can start visualizing what happened. You can visualize. Welcome, Professor Ndurumo. That's Professor Ndurumo. Yes. Now you can imagine, I'm lost, scrapping off and wiping off the attitudes, the myths, the beliefs, by introducing sign language as a cool language. Is it not a cool language? Now, research has been done. Even if you Google right now, what are the barriers of inclusivity? One of it will be attitude and myths, isn't it? So how then, have you ever read through the document and then probably they show you the solution of how to handle myths or beliefs? Have you ever encountered that? Zero. You won't encounter any. So what usually happens is we tend to empower more and forget the communication bit. Are we together? Because for us, the communication bit is now the key to unlocking inclusivity. And to unlocking the way we think and the attitude. So what we do, we introduce sign language as a cool language. Why? Within the disability world, the sign language is the only language that us who are hearing or abled are able to embrace very quickly, isn't it? I can't now start telling you, you go to school and start learning Braille, But we need something that is practical, isn't it? We need something that is practical. And believe you me, now that Professor is here, once you get to learn a language, and once you get to learn like sign language, for example, your mind has already started opening up. Not only for the deaf, but for the whole disability world. Who has ever experienced that? I actually want someone who will give a testimony. Like the time they learned, actually I'll call an interpreter, and she will tell us why she actually went ahead to even getting to interpretation. Because the minute you learn a language, it unlocks everything else. So whenever you learn sign language, which is within the disability world, believe you me, your mind now has started to open up. So you'll see yourself not only interacting with the deaf, but you interact with the blind, you interact with the albino, as in name them. Now it won't be a case of fear or a case of sympathy, it will be like, yeah, we are buddies. Whatever you can do, I'm able to do. You see? Because what we've done, and the challenges that we've done because of the attitudes and the mindset that we've always had, we created a certain environment of entitlement. Who knows the environment of entitlement? Have you experienced the entitlement feel? Yeah, like ni lazima. You get the lazima. It's a must for us to, to have these. It's not because they want. It's because we introduced it, and that's why you always will find you will find gaps in between. You find when you have deaf, they are alone, and as we are alone. So there is no connector. That connector now is the one that we are feeling asleep. Okay? So let me call the interpreter. Just come. Now, what led you to learning sign language?
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm a sign language interpreter. What made me to learn sign language? It's a friend. I was schooling in a school where the neighborhood, we had the deaf children in class 6. And I got that touch. I wanted to know how to speak to them. So when we went to fetch water in the same tap, we could start struggling for that. Then we could not communicate. So because of that, I got that interest. So I said, when I grow up, this is the language I would like to know. So when I knew the language afterwards, it made me to incorporate other disability. For example, the blind. Most of the time, most of my friends are the so-called the disability, the special needs. I interact with them. Most of them, they are my friends, not the hearing world or the normal in brackets. That's what I can say.
You get that? That's a real experience, and that's what happens. So whenever you introduce yourself into a language, you've already gotten to understand about the culture, you know, and how they communicate. And immediately you've opened up doors and friendship, you know, and all that. Now, like for her, she's able to actually have lunch with so many people who are within, you know, the disability world, isn't it? Who else can be able to go and dine and wine and all that with disabled, with any form of people with special needs? Who? Yes. The ones that will raise their hands, believe you me, they've been introduced into that community via a certain communication skill, not by mercy, not by sympathy. That sympathy comes at the first thing that will intrigue, you know, something in your heart that leads you to learn a certain communication skill. So now, as I go on, and I think I will expound more into it maybe the second session as you ask questions. The other services that we would have for Sleek Hub is the awareness, that awareness now that I'm trying to, you know, have you ever, actually, let me just ask a question. Have you ever looked at it at that angle? Be honest. Even those that have been in the world of, you know, special needs. Have you ever looked at it at that angle? The angle of to get rid of the myths, of the attitudes, you know, because most of the time what we know is the empowerment. And this is the example that I give, and I'll give it to you even today. We will empower Diana, who is deaf, to make a shoe, you know, to make that shoe, or to make those ties that you have, you know, and they really know how to make them very beautifully. But once they make them, where do they go sell them to? Where will they go sell? To the hearing. Say it loud. To the where? And it's the hearing and the deaf also, isn't it? And even other special ability people, okay? Do you think their materials will go, or their ties will be bought? Do you think they'll be bought? They'll be bought. At what quantity? At a low quantity. Why? Because there is a communication barrier. So what usually would happen, and what usually happens, is that most of the time we take advantage of their creativity. I'm looking into a world whereby if a deaf is able to make these ties, they're able to go to the market direct, and they get out there with their millions and not with thousands. You can be clapping for that. Aki, my dear friends. You know, because what happens now, there's usually a buyer, someone who comes in between, isn't it? Someone who comes in between will come, buy, you buy for 300 shillings, and then they'll go sell for 1,000 shillings. They've benefited, yes, isn't it? But now, it could have been much better if they went. Why can't we then create that environment for them? You understand? Why can't we then create that kind of environment? Another example that I'll give as I go sit down is disability, no one signs to be disabled, to be deaf, to be blind, no one signs. It just comes, isn't it? It can get you anytime, anywhere, everywhere, you know? And I always say that don't wait until that time it hits home, so that you're able to understand about disability. Learn about it before, you know, get to be oriented about this inclusivity and how to interact with everyone when you're able, when you're the way you are, because God has blessed you just the way you are, isn't it? Not like when it has hit home, is when you're thinking, oh, I need to learn sign language. Oh, I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, how do I even cope? That's why you see people get into depression, isn't it? But right now, the ones that are already in that world, would it be a shock? It wouldn't be a shock, isn't it? It wouldn't be a shock. If anything, there will be that small shock. Kidogo tu juu isha happen, because it has just happened. But for you, coping with it will be easier than someone else who has no idea about it, isn't it? So now let's embrace inclusivity through sign language. And for us, the sustainability of the language is also very important. I thank God for Professor Ndurumo, who started the journey for us. And now we are following him, you know, supporting and making it never die. Actually, this will never die. That's for sure. I'll promise you. Never die. If anything, we'll have to make the language sustainable. And how do we make it sustainable? Sustainability of the language, it means that once you learn the language, you still remain, just the same way you know English, you never forget English, isn't it? So we want to create a platform whereby you'll never get to forget sign language. Because every language you have to practice, isn't it? So we are having SLIC clubs. And SLIC clubs are in schools, they're in corporates, they're in higher learning institutions, and they're in communities. So if you know you can spearhead from your community, kindly get in touch with us. Because that's the way we'll make the language learn and stay, you know, and actually develop and borrow some of the languages, okay? Languages from different people, okay? Now, we have Interpreters Hub. I'm sure you're seeing these beautiful ladies in blue and pink. All these, we are embracing inclusivity. Even in SLIC Hub, we still have the deaf. We still involve other people that are special abled. And we train them. We stay, you should see us, we stay like a team. We actually even have children, you know? We encourage teaching kids. You've heard we have school clubs, You should see who has ever experienced kids learning sign language. Like mine, they know sign language. Even the 3-year-old, who is turning 3-year-old, knows sign language. Yes, they do. A 3-year-old knows sign language. You see how proud it is? I wish I came with them. Moja ko shule. He can't be able to come. Yeah, but you could have seen it practically. If at all we are able to introduce our children with the language, for them they will not grow like us, as we grew with a mindset that has already been corrupted. You get? The mindset has already been corrupted. But for them, if we introduce it from a young age as they grow, do you think the environment will be like us? Never. The environment will be more inclusive than we are right now, isn't it? So let's embark into training our children, into having the programs with them, you know, in schools and all that. So let me just stop there. And we'll talk more on inclusivity in the next session. Thank you.
Let's appreciate Diana as she takes her seat. Diana is always full of expectations as well. let's appreciate Diana for being able to have the dream and manifest it in this major way. While she was speaking, we are happy to announce that our main speaker of the day, Professor Ndurumo, is here with us. We really appreciate your presence, Professor, and we have heard so much about you, and we continue learning of the good things that you're doing, but I will introduce you later to just give us one or two. I'm sure everyone in the plenary is eager to shake your hand, to hear your voice, and also to be part and parcel of the good work that you began here in Kenya, and especially for the deaf and sign language in general. Then I mentioned that we had a representative from the High Commission of India. If you could kindly just come and greet the plenary briefly as we proceed with the program. It's quite important to acknowledge some of the partnerships that we have. So thank you very much. Let's appreciate her.
I am very happy to be here, and I just learned the one sign language. It's like Thank you so much to educate me little with the sign language. Especially my High Commissioner, Mr. Rahul Shabra, sent me here to attend this conference and your celebrations with the Sign Language Day. He is willing. I can work. Let me introduce myself first. I am Dr. Yogita, and just the first yoga teacher of the Kenya. And since last 4 months, I am working around the Nairobi and visiting the different schools and colleges. But our High Commission is willing that I can educate the disability students more with which quality I have, like yoga and health. So especially I am here and willing to work with all disabilities society in Nairobi and around the Kenya. So we can make like healthy society, and the word yoga, it means just to be unite, like to be joined. No, so with my knowledge, I would like to connect with the disability students to bring in this life, so they have more experience, more willpower, more confidence to live with all this world. Thank you very much to keep me here. Thank you so much, sir.
Let's appreciate her as she takes a seat. As I mentioned, partnerships are able to carry us beyond some of the bridges that may be before us, may usher us into our dream. So we really, really appreciate the presence of our partners. KISE, the Communications Authority, is here with us, the High Commission of India, and of course our plenary, the students who have made it here. We really appreciate the associations that are present here, the corporates that are also here. We really, really appreciate that you've taken time to be with us in this launch. I am also happy to announce that we are going to have a Q&A session, question and answer session. It's going to be in a sort of well-structured process, and any questions that you have about inclusivity, about communication, about fears as well, we are more than able to embrace them. We can have, it's going to be a good chat. Not every day that you have such a panel. We have a very, very strong panel with us as well, so we can engage any questions, any queries and comments that you have about sign language in Kenya in general. This is going to be the best place to do so. And just to move on with our program, as I promised that we have with us a very, very able panel. And I really want to ask that you take advantage. And I have this honor to introduce a very, very important partner with for SLIC. As Diana has mentioned, SLIC has been long-term coming. 10 years is not a very short time. Meaning if you had a child who was born 10 years ago, it means now they're in probably class 4 or 5, right? Yeah, class 4 or 5. So it's a dream that has had to go through the process of crawling and walking and talking and all the developmental stages that any dream takes forth. Our chief speaker today is a deaf educator. I feel that his reputation precedes him. I feel so humbled to introduce him to you this morning, but I know his reputation precedes him. If you don't know, Professor is the third deaf person from Africa to obtain a PhD in 1980. 1980, yeah, this is worth appreciating. Some of us were not even thought to be born. 1980 is quite a long while ago. Yeah. Then, if you also don't know, he has been presented with numerous awards, globally and also locally. In December 2000, he was awarded a Distinguished Service Medal by the President of Kenya. So you can imagine that level of distinction by the professor. So let's really appreciate him for his good work. And some of us might also not know, he is also the chief editor of the African Annals of the Deaf. This is one of the actually the biggest. What they are called, I'm trying to remember, I'm not in the academia. Journals, exactly, journals. Journals are platforms where anyone who's trying to make a difference in the field will write an article or will put an academic paper there for people to understand what is happening in this field. So there is the American version, the European version, but he is the chief editor and also one of the founders of the African Annals of the Deaf. So spend some time in his presence as well, just understand the good work that he has been doing. I have had him been mentioned even by the lecturer, Dan Hwaga, on the work they've been doing since the beginning of sign language here in Kenya. So, ladies and gentlemen, without far much ado, I would like to welcome Professor Ndurumo to just come and grace this occasion in his own special way. So thank you very much, our good professor, and welcome. Let's appreciate him as he checks in.
I'm very happy to be here today with you. Thank you very much, Diana, for inviting me. Every time that I'm invited, I'm very happy because it helps me to think a lot, to come up with new ideas. If we're not given an opportunity to talk, then we become stagnated. But we are invited, we come up, we think of new ideas. But before I talk, let me tell you who I am. I'm Professor Michael Ndurumo. I am a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, the Department of Psychology. But before that, I worked with the Ministry of Education for a very long time. I was based at Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. And my responsibility were many. Among them was KISE. When KISE was established in 1985, I was responsible for special education in Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. And the Director of Education asked me to develop a curriculum for KISE. At that time, the curriculum were in different schools and different colleges. High Ridge. Then the other one was Kamwenja for the deaf. The other one was also in High Ridge. That is for the mentally retarded. That was one that was missing was the physical impaired. So I had to work hard to bring together the curriculum to one, to be based here. And what I've noticed here is that KISE has developed very much. It is different from what it was in 1985. And I almost did not recognize it when I entered at the gate. So I appreciate the work that has been done by the director of KISE and his team. KISE is a very beautiful place, as you can see now. I have been to Uganda Institute of Special Education. The model that they have is the same old model that we had here, hoping that Uganda Institute of Special Education will change. Now about sign language, it has a long journey. When I came back from America, that time deaf children were not using sign language in schools. They were expected to speak, lip read, that is to be in quotes normal. That was the goal of special education that time. The academic bit was not very important. The important thing was to make us more hearing, in quotes, to be able to interact with hearing in the society. But when I told the government that was not the right way, we needed to change. So in 1982, I made a proposal to the Ministry of Education to change. The Ministry of Education changed and accepted to change from oral method to a method that included all aspects of communication. That is sign language, lip reading, and writing. All to help the deaf children to go to high school. So we have moved very far. Perhaps I cannot remember everything. When you're a pioneer, you cannot remember the small details, but the broad ones. So if I have missed something, perhaps you can ask me later during question and answer time. My topic today is exploring principles of universal design as a catalyst for enhancing sign language inclusivity in Kenya. That sounds very technical. How many people here are deaf? By raise of hand. Maina, are you one? Those who are deaf. Thank you. If you look at this place, are you comfortable? What are the benefits that you see here? Is it they're saying it's nice, the windows are large? Are the windows okay? When you're coming in, is it okay? This is what we call universal design that makes it a kind of a standard for all people. Deaf people seem to like big windows because of the light that is coming in. With that open window and there, we're able to interact with the world out there. We know what is happening out there. It is what we call universal. It helps us very much and to be in contact with what is happening out there. And even the light, it's very clear. And the colors that are painted are good. It is what we call universal concept. It started from architecture. People who are building, they have to think of all the different people who will be using the room. It does not have the steps. That is easier for someone in a wheelchair. Almost everything here that it's developed that way with the concept of universal design. But now, how do we apply it to sign language? First of all, talking about the development of sign language in Kenya, it started with establishment of Kenya's Society of Deaf Children in 1958. That was 2 years before I became deaf. I became deaf in 1960. I was 8 years old. At that time, we did not have a school for the deaf out there. So I went to one of the schools that was called Dagoretti Children's Center on your way to Kikuyu. And I was helped very much by the Kenya Society for Deaf Children. At that time, we had one secretary of KICD, a lady called Elizabeth Otiri. The name is not here, but it's among the books. Then, and she helped me to start Aga Khan unit for the deaf in Nairobi. That was for the Indian children. The Dagoretti children unit was for the deaf. It was for us African children. In 1961, we had another school come up, like Nyangoma Primary School for the Deaf and Mumias Primary School for the Deaf. That is the short history of, these were the pioneer schools. I will not go to details, you can read. But these are the key schools. Number one, we had the Aga Khan in Mombasa, but for some reason, the school does not exist now. I do not know what happened. I do not, perhaps it was closed around 1990s. Or it may have relocated. But Dagoretti unit and Aga Khan is there, and Nyangoma. It started a place called Luaki, in a place called Luaki. Then they moved to Nyangoma in Bondo. Then we had Mumias, is a center for deaf students because it had primary school and now it has a secondary school and also a vocational school. How many deaf students are in school? This is the last part. It has a total of almost 12,000. With 6,500 in primary school, 2,800 in units, and almost 2,000 in secondary school. 730 in technical institutes. That means almost 12,000 now. But that is a very small number. Because the Kenya Society for Deaf Children says that we have about 200,000 deaf children out there, but very few are served. We started in 82. That's when I made a proposal to the Ministry of Education to change from oral methods to sign language, and the Ministry of Education accepted the proposal. Then they proposed to send us to the schools for the deaf for input. We call it public participation. And the schools for the deaf were very positive, and they were ready to change. Very few were not keen, but almost 90% were ready to change. Then in 1985, the government set aside an institute called Machakos School for the Deaf. It was financed by the Swedish Friends there in collaboration with Kenya Society for Deaf Children. We in-service the teacher and chose children from different schools. We had Tumutumu School for the Deaf, Kerogoya School for the Deaf. We had Kamboi School for the Deaf, among others. Those were the children who were seen like rejects because they were not good in speech. We were given those students and we took them to Machakos. Then in 1987, the school was evaluated. And Machakos School for the Deaf was found to be the best, and it beat Kerogoya Schools for the Deaf, Tumutumu, Muranga, Kamboi. So with that, the government accepted sign language. From that, we never changed. Lastly, in 1988, we came up with the book on sign language. We started working on it from 1982 to 1988, but lastly, in 1988, we got the book with almost 2,500 signs in. Some were from the schools for the deaf, some from the deaf adults, and some were borrowed. We borrowed a lot from the Americans because anything that we started with education we have to borrow. We cannot just wait until we are perfect to have a perfect book or a perfect sign. Here it's the same with us in Kenya. We use English instead of Kiswahili. We have borrowed English to use it here. But our aim was to start with American Sign Language, but later remove American Signs and keep adding the Kenyans. But that may have not happened. But as you know, language is dynamic. We cannot prevent deaf children from borrowing or watching films or YouTube. and I've seen so much change here. Young people are keeping adding signs, but that is good. What made Kenya Sign Language safe? The first thing, it is protected by the Constitution of Kenya. That's a great achievement now. And the Constitution of Kenya tells us to continue doing research to expand the science in Kenya. Then it is protected by Persons with Disability Act 2003, among others. Some are plenary, some are pending, but it can help us to look into there to see what they're saying about sign language. We have some. Am I too fast or should I slow down? Now, what is your view about Kenyan Sign Language? We have conflict views about Kenyan Sign Language, and that is what is bringing us into big conflict among ourselves. Sometimes they make us fight, but that is because of our point of view. It depends on where you are and where you're coming from. I am from education and psychology arena. I am also a member of the deaf community. I am an educator, and I think about the future of the deaf children. My views may not agree with yours, but some of you may agree with my views. That is what is very important for us to understand. We have one perception. If you have read the theory called the Ecological system theory, it shows how their child develops from when they're young, then they move to the community in the village, then they move out. So that can help us to understand. And again, deaf people are not one group. Among ourselves, we have different people within us. Some are born deaf, some became deaf after 4 years. Those who are born deaf are more keen to say that KSL is the best. But those who became deaf after 4 years, they are great with language. Some became deaf later in life, like me, at 8 years old. So our views are different. It can be a method of communication. That is the beauty about KSL. It is not restricted. It can be a method of teaching. If you're a teacher of the deaf, then that is where perhaps you can fit in. Then it can also be a foreign language to others. It can be used in schools, a hearing school, as a foreign language. It can be an academic subject. Then it can be an examinable subject. And lastly, as a method of teaching in schools, like the way you use Kenyan Signed English, here I am using more of Kenyan Signed English because I'm communicating with you following English step by step. But if I met deaf people, I will use KSL. That will be different. So it depends on the situation. Coming to your theme, inclusivity. Sign language is to include people, otherwise they'll be marginalized. Some can feel marginalized. Like you said before, deaf people can sit here alone and hearing people alone. Or many of you, and we have few deaf people who would stay alone. So if you want to bring them together, sometimes I can feel it myself. If I do not have an interpreter with me, I can sit with my colleagues, but they may prefer to communicate in a quick way than writing. But with me here, I have my interpreter called Jacqueline Joy. She has been interpreting for me from the University of Nairobi. She has a BA from the University of Nairobi. She was among the students I taught. Then she became one of the best, and I asked the university to hire her. And now she's working on her master's degree. And she's now a full member of the Department of Psychology. Meaning, I feel secured because my interpreter is here. I do not have to keep looking for other interpreters. Sometimes people can come, and next time they might not come. But here I have predictability, and which is good from the University of Nairobi to give me an interpreter. Potential targets who we can create sign language for is parents, brothers, sisters, extended family. Then we have teachers, interpreters and lecturers, service providers like doctors, lawyers and others. Then we have policy makers and curriculum developers. It includes many different people. We can add more in the list. So my question is this: can we borrow the concept of universal design as a framework to expand inclusion space in relationship to sign language? That is the main question that I have here. The concept of universal design is very easy to apply to people with physical impairment or those who are in wheelchair. It's very easy. But perhaps for the visually impaired, but what about the deaf people? I'm trying to explore this area. I may not have all the answers. We can partner and come up with ideas. How do we expand the concept of universal design in sign language? Can first some of you volunteer and give some points?
once we come up with those signs and then maybe they are used occasionally, they will bring universality instead of finger smelling most of the time.
Yes? Any other? Maina? Thank you. Universal design will help us in having standards. The second bit, standards in science for schools. All the schools in Kenya should have the same. The second bit, to expand vocabularies. Our vocabularies are very limited. Sign language is everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world is limited. English has vocabularies of how many words? I wish I can Google that, but you will think about it. It is very expanded. But as here we have a book, like I said before, of 2,500, that is very limited. The third bit, you can make by standard sign language accessible to as many people as possible. Like he said, like the lawyers, the doctors, the nurses, interpreters, and so on. Then the fourth bit, universal will help us have the same common curriculum. A common curriculum, meaning that if we teach here, what is being taught here is the same as what is being taught in all the places. Then we have common exams, a common exam for all, like the interpreters. Here's the interpreters there, and all through are the same. That way we are able to grow and expand. Then we can have a board of examiners for interpreters, a board of sign language examiners of teachers, and different other ways. The same with the curriculum for interpreters. Perhaps not the word interpreters, but here, paralegals. Like now, an interpreter for law, perhaps they can go to Kenya School for Law to teach sign language, but in that place, perhaps follow the same curriculum. Then they go there to Kenya Medical Training Institute or college for the nurses. If they go there, they use the same curriculum, and almost everywhere. That will be able to expand sign language inclusion. That is the best way that we can use with universal design for learning, sorry. If we think out that way, we need to stop the politics on KSL and so on. That makes us local, limited. Am I right? The same way we can expand for the universities. Now STEM subjects. Like he said, we are limited here. In sciences, technology, engineering, where are the science? How many of our children are being taught science subjects? It's very limited. We do not limit ourselves to KSL here as a way of communication. We need to think outside the box and expand. That is my view, that one day we'll expand and have more deaf people become scientists. I have one deaf student at the University of Nairobi. Her name is Ruth Ndunda. She got a BSc in food, in biotechnology. from Ndurumo campus, that is from the University of Nairobi. Ndurumo is a science campus. We are very proud of her. That is an achievement in that specific area. So here, I have noticed that deaf people seem to do very well in sciences and mathematics. They are thinkers, they quietly analyze and challenge and like to solve issues. Our deaf students, even students with disability, perform lowly in science-related subjects. And now, if we can develop STEM-related subjects, then we train teachers in those areas. Even you interpreters must know STEM subjects. What is the sign for? What is the sign for a bottle? What is the sign for web? So what is in web? Technology. There are so many things in technology. We have challenges in having such signs. We have a challenge. And now, deaf people sign electricity. How do they sign electricity? Light, electricity is the same. Is it different? What is the sign for physics? Physics. That's American, right? But here in Kenya, we sign a socket for that. That's the sign for a socket. That is charging. It is also a socket and so many other things. But which one? We need to think of how to expand this. Develop very many, then we'll need to spread it out, different people. Okay. We have to develop science which are STEM-based. STEM helps us to spread and have more people become professionals in different ways. Not only focus on ourselves, that is it's a very limiting scope. Next. Now it's on inclusive education. Inclusive education is a very important area, but we have a problem here in Kenya and in Africa in general. Schools for the deaf are isolated. And again, they are monotonous. Excuse me for using that word. I may be very critical, but that is the fact. We teach the same thing. I'm asking myself, how many deaf children go to high school? Then from high school to the university? Very small. Right now, Kenya has 35 deaf people with university education. 35. That is very small. But people with physical disability are over, I think, over 300. visually impaired are over 100,000. But the deaf, 35. What are we doing? Is our approach alright? Are we teaching using dynamic methods or what? Being critical again. But again, you need to think about it. If you want to be an innovator or a leader, you have to think outside the box. You do not be tied down to what other people have been saying. You can be seen like a rebel, but it is a beautiful thing to be a rebel for the good cause. I was a rebel, and I came up with sign language here that we are using now. Now looking back, I feel satisfied. That is my work. My work was not in vain. That is what the Bible says, that your work is not in vain in the Lord. So you have good reason to move and do good things. And with that, you can be able to expand your scope. So let us be critical. That is part of critical thinking, to think outside the box. The concept of mainstreaming, the concept of inclusive education and mainstreaming have not yet taken root in deaf education in Africa. Myself, when I became deaf, I can't forget Elizabeth Coldry, who was a Mzungu. She was a speech therapist based at Kenyatta Hospital. But what I liked about her, she loved deaf people very much and loved children. Every Thursday, we had to go to her to our office at Kenyatta Hospital for speech therapy. So I was taught speech by her. And what I noticed here, they had another office here. The Africans here were on one side and the other Asian children were on the other side, but would say hello to each other. While the deaf are the same. But what I liked about her, she thought beyond the ordinary. She chose me and another deaf girl to go to a primary school in Dagoretti village. We would sleep in the center, then go to the school in Dagoretti village. Here we had social support, and the other bit we had education support. And it helped very much. After 2 years, she said that I was too smart to continue in a unit. So I was transferred back to my former primary school, and I continued there, but without an interpreter. So I was kind of integrated. When I finished primary school, I went to high school, but they did not have sign language. But it was a Baptist high school. So the missionaries were positive to help me to become integrated. From there, I went to America. That is where I learned sign language in America. That helped me sit in class with an interpreter like here. I sat here, and the interpreter would sit next to me, and the lecturer would at the front. It helped me very much to go on. That's how I learned the importance of mainstreaming. And I went on to university. I used an interpreter with me. Some volunteered for free, some for pay, but I had professional interpreters, which helped me very much. I cannot forget them. I have written a book on the history of deaf education in Kenya. It will come out soon. And I've put the names of the interpreters in here because they helped me very much. So that's what I mean. So the schools for the deaf have to embrace and accept inclusive education. You know Kaheti girls? Do you know Kaheti boys? Why don't they just combine? And it helps and becomes very easy. You have to solve something different. You go there, learn with the hearing students, then you go here and sleep and integrate with your friends, and the teachers will help you to interpret. You go there, then back and forth. That makes things easier. We do not have to start new things, but we use what we have there. The same with Kamboi. Kamboi School for the Deaf is here, and we have Kamboi Primary School, Kambobo Girls. We have different around. Why do they collaborate? That is a better approach to me. The other thing is the spheres of influence. The schools for the deaf that we know we know their areas of influence, need to know their areas of influence. The community they live around a community. How can they influence change? Diana was talking about attitudes, but here the schools for the deaf can be able to change attitudes. That the Constitution of Kenya says that the special schools should be integrated in the society. What does it mean? They should not be hidden out there, but they should be part of the society, part of the community. Then we can use that approach to influence those that are around. Change the attitudes in churches around, in the village, in the market, in different areas. This can spread out. I forgot one thing. ICT in inclusivity. I forgot that part, but do you see my phone? Can you see a difference? Can you see a difference? What's the difference? What I'm trying to say is that what you're using is a deaf technology. We started with this, with a keypad. It was started a very long time ago. Then they came to Kenya, we saw it as a new thing. But America and Europe, it's an old thing. Can you hear when someone is tapping? Because deaf people will be able to communicate with each other. And this technology started in a very interesting way. If you know about the old computers, it was a very big computer like this. It was kept at a corner. If you wanted to communicate with someone out there, you'd come here and dial the phone. You dial the number, you'd place it there, so you started typing to the other person. At that time, we did not have many phones like today, so the ICT helped very much. You can think of many different ways to make better use of ICT. We have one deaf man called Hudson Asiema. Do you know him? He's very good in developing apps. And also we have Steve Wadigo, who is also deaf. Steve studied in UK, in one of the big famous university. The same with Hudson, studied in America. They developed technology. That way, technology helps us to become inclusive. But how? There's so many different ways that are listed that I cannot list. I'm not an expert in that area. If I get Hanson, he can do it for us. But that is one of the areas. The next is teaching sign language. Parents. This is based on a research that was done here in Kenya with the secondary school students. In 2015, I had a mentorship camp for the deaf youth. Excuse me, am I using so much of your time? Okay. So researchers found that almost 64% of use communication with their parents through speech and writing. And 35% use sign language. If you have to move and teach sign language in homes, then the other one, communication with their brothers and sisters. 55% use speech. Then we have 44% that use sign language. Meaning that sign language is not common at home. It should be one of the areas that you need to move into. Then the other bit is competence. Competence of sign language trainers who teaches sign language. This is very important. You must have qualified teachers. So to what extent are our trainers qualified? What is the universal design to measure their qualification? Perhaps we do not have, but we need to think about it. Then, sign language teachers, how qualified are our teachers in sign language to be able to communicate in different ways? The teachers for the deaf, we depend on them very much. Some may not be very qualified in sign language. Some pick signs from the students in schools, but that is the wrong way. It should be the other way around. And the teachers for the deaf should be very good. One thing that I kept telling the teachers, that they should think deaf. Think deaf. How? Do not think in your own way. You need to understand KSL deeply. You need to interact with deaf people. Live with them, eat with them. Then you'll start thinking deaf like them. Do not think in English, but here like a deaf person. I remember when I was in Gallaudet University in America, I used signed English. That was my area. I used sign English because that was how I was taught. Then when I went to Gallaudet University, I saw many deaf people out there. And in the evening, we had to go to and eat together. And I sat with them in a round table. And I saw them talk to each other. But I sat here, I felt left out. Why? I was not competent in ASL. I was good in English, but not in ASL. I was thinking in terms of English. I wanted to do it my way, but I decided now, can I stop thinking in English I start thinking and watch them. Then I noticed that their communication was very visual, dramatic, and free. From that point, I was able to understand them. Here is the same thing that applies in principle. I can tell deaf people communicating KSL. I use Kenyan Signed English, and here I can use KSL. Yesterday we had a walk. You remember? Many used KSL. Many people use KSL. I've started questioning myself if we are really using the KSL the way it should be. No. But my observation is that KSL has changed very much. It is in between KSL and here Kenya Signed English. It is the in between, the middle. Even when we're interpreting it, you're not using KSL per se. You're not pure KSL. Mine is not pure KSL. We are in between. Someone can do a research on that, but that is my observation. We have to move from KSL, that is pure, that is KSL of 1980s, because, like I said here, the youth who have come from Mohoro, for example, who use Kenyan Signed English, we are moving. KSL, that is pure, is more, perhaps, rural. Someone has to do a research on that. Competence of interpreters. That's another area that we need to think about. You can say that I'm an interpreter, yes. That is fine, I do not have a problem with that. But how competent are you? What kind of certification level do you have? One in America, measure and examine you to see where you fit. That is from A, B, C, D, E, F, and J. So A is the lowest. As you go up, we have J is the highest. So with your competence, they give you a responsibility to be responsible for the ones that are starting, the small interpreters. Like now at the university, is it possible to interpret for me at the university level? It's not easy, but it's very important to come up with a way to measure and examine. Then give one a certificate accordingly. Some can be legal interpreters, some medical interpreters, some education. So there are very many categories, but the standard should be there. I do not have all the answers. That's an area that we can discuss in details and come up with the way forward. Mine are this, perhaps they are limited, but with your input and contribution, then you can expand it and come up with the way forward. I always like to debate things and brainstorm. Then we can be able to come up with policies. You give your ideas, what you think is the way forward, and what's the future, and what should we do. These are limited. We can adapt that one. That's the universal design. The second bit, out there we have Kenya Sign Language Bill going around. It is not perfect, but it can be improved. It is the one that we have here for Kenyan Sign Language. To me, we need to support it, but improve on it to become perfect.
not to criticize it, it is us to improve, because it is now within public participation domain with us. Then, we need a Special Education Act to control special education, and also to talk about inclusive education, so many other things. Then, we need interpreters for the Deaf Act. Not everyone who says that I am an interpreter, in quotes, is an interpreter. We have to polish to meet the standards and give you grades. Is that okay? That is all for now. Thank you.
Even thank him enough, I guess. And I just think we can just give him some appreciation. Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for engaging us. I have seen some milestones as well. I'm one of those people who were not quite conversant with what is happening around people living with disabilities until I met Diana herself. I knew about the milestones in Mumias, probably due to some of my friends there in Mombasa as well. I knew someone who was having some programs there, but I really, really appreciate that you walked us through the chronology of how sign language has come to be. And I think it's a challenge to all of us, because he was able to break the barriers, right? Without all this technology that we are having right now, without all this information, and without all this, I believe even resources meaning you and me, resources meaning the platforms that have been created, even through KISE, to ensure that we are championing the process of inclusivity. So thank you very much for that talk, that discussion, and just being as honest and be open with your life as well, because this is your life. We are quite happy that you opened up a bit on your personal journey. Now, for the interest of time, I would like to also apologize, where we would appreciate if we proceed till the end, other than have a break. I can see some Democrats saying that we need to be involved in this decision. So I'm kindly requesting that we don't break, rather just have 1 minute, 2 minutes actually of leg stretch. And then we come back and then have our panel, right? And then at the end, we can have our snacks and tea break. Because we were to end at exactly 1 p.m. As you can see, it's 1/4 the hour. So for those who are in agreement, just maybe raise your hand so that I can feel I'm not alone in this. Okay. Would I repeat the question with more emphasis?
So I'll move to the slide and just give a brief story, that is slide 1, of how we started. Well, I was born in a family that had a deaf kid ahead of me, just one ahead of me. In a family of 5, our third born was deaf, or is deaf. So what happened is, when I grew up, as I was growing up, probably the difference is around 3 years. So as I was growing up, I learned very fast how to interpret in the rudimentary way. What we call water, I could interpret very well for the people who had come to visit us at home, our aunts. And I used to make money, by the way. Like, they'll give me 1 bob, or that time it was cents. 10 cents to go buy biscuits because I was interpreting. So something happened that by the time I had grown up and she went to school and I went to school, then the real problems began, that we disconnected completely. I could not interpret, neither could I communicate to her. Why? She had acquired another language, different from the language we were using to communicate before. She acquired sign language. And this problem journeyed on all the way from primary, high school, and now because I went to school far away from home, and I used to come occasionally, and she used to come occasionally at home. So we became total strangers. Perfect friends now became total strangers because of communication. That was the barrier that I encountered in my early stages in life. And the question was, how am I going to kill these barriers? That is something that I didn't know that will shape up my future venture as an entrepreneur, and also my future ability to to contribute to the society. So in the year 2011, that is, I had worked for some time, came to Nairobi, and she was back at home, of course, still encountering those barriers. I went through a session whereby I wanted to create entertainment for deaf people, because I was thinking, how is it that every time we are watching TV and we are listening to radio, she's there in the dark because she could not understand anything. So basically, that is the problem that I wanted to solve. And how did I do that? Slide 1. So as on slide 1, why do we bother about barriers to inclusion? I believe that our barriers are not in the physical service barriers or interaction barriers. Our barriers are up here in our head, and that's why I coined the word. Though I missed an art there, that through building mental ramps, we shall all know the need to build metal ramps. Through building mental ramps, we shall all know the need to build metal ramps. Why do I say that? That whichever policies we make, whatever level of integration we achieve, as long as we are locked up here in the head, it will just be a story. It will be another conference. It will not be another gathering. And after that, it will actually be back to zero. Second. So I've just taken through there that entertainment, I felt that entertainment was going to be the best approach. So I started training a team of deaf kids to do music in Nairobi at a Guadalupe church, where I was actually a congregant. And out of the team that we were training, they started doing very well. And they was like, wow, this is something that I want to scale to the next level. So I talked to the Embassy of Finland. At that time, the ambassador decided that she was going to assist us by enabling us host the first event in Nairobi for the deaf community, a music event. I don't know how many of you attended at Nakumatt Lifestyle, by show of hands. Any deaf who came to Nakumatt Lifestyle in 2012, February on 13th? Any deaf who came in? Good. Maybe some of you are still pretty young. So among the team that we were working with, people like Douglas Munyendo, Laldagi, I think you know him. We were working with him at that particular time. We were working with Steve Odima, Fred. They are all at Guadalupe. So what happened is, when Signmark, that is the Finnish deaf musician, came in and we did that performance, it elated these guys. Then there was this guy, Laldagi, who went alone now to start looking for sponsorship, because the money that we had used ilikuwa imeisha. So he started looking for sponsorship. And I believe that at some point he even encountered people like Bruce Odhiambo, who assist him record his first, to start now doing the music in collaboration with people like musicians like Nonini. So after some time, he came back and told us, boss, you told me to do music. I've already done music, but no one is playing my music. So I approached some producers also in the US, which I thought that if I have films and music and come up with a TV program for only 30 minutes, that will be ideal for me to have entertainment for the deaf community, even if it is 11:30. And my journey started. I walked around the TV station, the first 5 TV stations. That time, only the big 5 or the big 6 or thereabout. But no one was able to accommodate. Then I was very furious. In the last, I will not tell you where I did the last appointment, but I rushed immediately to it's called Communication Authority. That time it was called, what was the name? CCKS, to report that, you see, I've been having this idea, but no one is able to do this, to take it up. Can you just force one of them to do it? But what they told me, that why are you looking for 30 minutes if we can give you 24 hours? And wow. I was told, go and bring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 documents, which I actually had. Within a week, I had a license. That is way back now in 2015. So that time we got the authority to broadcast or look for a channel to broadcast, because a license doesn't mean that you are broadcasting. You need to go to the next level now, again, look for a channel to broadcast. Next slide. So what does Science TV do? We propagate social, economic, political, and talent development of persons with disabilities through broadcasting in sign language with voiced languages as overrides. Meaning that if you were to watch Science TV now, there'll be, whether it's music, it will have sign language. Whether it's a film, it will have sign language. Whether it's a commentary, a talk, advertisement, everything will have sign language. So our objective is to offer television programming that integrates all spheres. The word is integrates all spheres of PWDs into the society, fostering cohesion to minimize stigma and promote esteem boosting, which is actually very important, because persons with disabilities at some point miss out some of these opportunities because of a simple thing: stigma, and because they don't have esteem. Once we eliminate those amongst them, then ourselves we're able to build mental ramps. Then you realize that every other ramp that we want to build in the society will actually be feasible. Next slide. We are available on free-to-air, covering Nairobi, Kiambu, Murang'a, Kirinyaga, Embu, Kitui, Makueni, Machakos, Kajiado, Narok, Bomet, Kericho, Nakuru, Nyandarua. And by December, God willing, we should be doing nationwide. So those who are not able, within this coverage, should be able to see us within December. That is God willing. Next slide. Now, I will do a small definition that disability is an impairment that may be cognitive, developmental, intellectual, physical, sensory, or a combination of this. But whichever the case, there are disadvantages that come with it arising from such impairments. Some will be, it affects a person's life and may be present from birth or occur during a person's life. So those are some of the things that we need to mark. And the disabilities could be visible and invisible. And when I get to this point, I normally pause and ask myself a question that is still lingering in my head. I've not had this chance. Recently, there was an interview that was going on for the, I think, people to be employed in the Labor and Industrial Court. And there was this particular lawyer. I think he was in law school for, if it's not 4 years, I think, then probably, the university 4 years, then law school for another 2 years. I think it's 1 year or 2 years. Then he's been practicing for 16 years. Then he was asked a question that, what are the 3 arms of the government? Then the guy could only answer 2 and stick there. He could not remember the 3rd one. So the question that goes on, was there anything amiss that we should ask ourselves what actually really happened? That having practiced all that time, you could only remember parliament, executive, and the people interviewing him, he has forgotten the judiciary. He forgotten completely. And it actually kept me wondering. And that's why we are saying that the barriers to inclusion should not just be, how are these guys walking on the street? Do they have a white cane? But also in our interview rooms. Are our interview rooms very conducive for some disabilities? For example, dyslexic people, they really get affected depending on which crowd they are facing. They could be A material, but they actually forget the basic of the basics, even their second name, depending on which situation they have been subjected to. And at some point, there are some invisible disabilities like autism, in which some of them perform beyond par. If we've known of some of the best inventions in the world, these inventions actually came about by some of the people reading through them. We've been touted that these guys were actually had some level of autism. They were on the autism spectrum, although not very, very heavy, but they were on the autism spectrum. So if these people were actually not included in the first place, given that opportunity in the first place, they would actually be out. Next slide. What are the emerging issues in the disability space? There are conventions that are actually guiding us. Because when we are talking about inclusion or barriers to inclusion, people have sat down and have looked at some of these barriers that are actually affecting us. And they are, like Prof was talking about universal designs or the universal designs. And you realize that all these are governed by some of the conventions, the CRPD, UN CRPD, that Kenya sent into in 2007. The Constitution of Kenya is also very particular about that. And if you go to that, the Constitution looks, if you look at Articles 27, subsection 3, 4, 6, and further to Article 54, they are all looking at equal treatment, like 27, subsection 3, include the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. That someone should not be discriminated any ground, including disability. That means we have a legal background, a legal backing that actually supports everything that needs to be done as regards inclusion. And this inclusion involves even using a language that everybody understands. And that's why we are talking even about sign language. We also have Disability Act that is under review now. And the Constitution recognizes Kenya Sign Language as the 3rd national language. We also look at the developments where we've had the Global Disability Summit that took place in London in 2018, that is in July. And it highlighted issues. And number 1 was quality education. Number 2 was economic empowerment. Number 3 was elimination of stigma and discrimination. Number 4 was data disaggregation. And number 5 was assistive technology. If you look at all these things, they're actually dovetailing into what we call inclusion. Because once you attain all this, then inclusion will actually be realistic. And one of the things we believe in is that we should move from policy to action. When you move from policy to action, that is when now we'll have proper inclusion. We also have, Kenya is debating the African Union Charter on Disability, in which we are actually supposed to assent to as a country. And if you look at issues to do with the employment of persons with disabilities also, they are well provided for, where we have the requirement that everybody, and this all points to inclusion, that at least every employer, whether public or private, must have 5% of their workforce persons with disability. But can that be achieved if we still have mental blocks, if we still don't have mental ramps? So inclusion starts with you and me. Then when the other person comes in, they fit in. And I normally take this example. I am one of the employers of persons with disabilities. And when we are discussing with them, you realize that the environment has actually smoothened off. Whether you have disability or you don't have disability, you're actually all equal. But the situations have been presented where I've gone to talk to people and they don't know how to behave when there is a person with disability is amongst them. For example, of a situation whereby a beautiful girl on the wheelchair, if I tell her that you are so cute, first of all, I start questioning how this is the situation that I pick from the other community. Then they start questioning that if I tell her that she's beautiful, will she think that I'm telling her she's beautiful? Will she believe in my telling her that? So those are the questions that we are talking about, inclusion and building the mental ramps that will end up building. But I'm being told that I'm actually less on time. Then there is also the Sustainable Development Goal SDG, like we leave no one behind. Next slide. Next slide. Now, in an organization where you want to have full inclusion, the customer experience that these people come into, or persons with disability, when they come to look for that job, when they come for that interview, when they come to buy your service, when they that level of inclusion at the point of entry of the organization, because every organization, the customer service point of entry is actually what forms or what foments what the organization stands for. I've gone to organizations where they have persons with disabilities actually at their reception, and that's a very bold statement. It tells you that everyone is included here, or everyone is accepted in this organization. Next step. And also we look at some of the languages that we use to persons with disabilities. If you use the right language, for example, Prof will correct me here, that deaf people will not like to be called hearing impaired persons. Is that true? Yes, deaf people just want to be called deaf. But visually impaired persons would not want to be called blind. I don't know, Chairman, if that is true. Yes, yes, it's true. But now, it depends on how you look at it from whichever perspective. So for you as an organization to have the right language is also very important. Now, these are one of the things that I'm looking at consideration by inclusion even in decision making in companies, senior management. What do? Have those policies. Don't just be seen to be acting, but have those actual policies that will help, for example, parents of children with disability end up leaving employment. Remember, the parent is not employed, but the fact that she has an appendage of a baby who has disability, the parent actually has ended up with disability in one way or another. So if an organization does not have policies that are inclusive enough, so top management can actually be a barrier to inclusion when it comes to persons with disability, the interview room, the way we play, for example, mental health disability is also
with a sister or a brother or a parent or a relative or even a friend who is not able to communicate in a language that you understand. I can imagine just trying to share love, share issues, share life. So it's quite a challenge. So I see the continuous need of inclusivity, especially in our communication. I am totally sold out. I think I need to spend some more time watching TV. I don't watch a lot of TV, so just trying to support also what you guys are doing at Fine TV. So thank you very much even for gracing our occasion here this afternoon. Now, just on the interest of time, I'm really, really sorry. The time is far much gone. So I would like to invite our panelists to the front. Professor, kindly, if you could just move forward. And also, Mr. Hwaga, also kindly join us. It's not really a hot seat, because it's more of interaction. And also, Mr. Luke, karibu sana. I think your experiences and your passion enable you to sit in front over there. And Diana will be joining us also as part of the panelists. She's having sorting one entry there with the people from the fourth estate. Look, in fact, to the arms of government, right? The first is executive, legislature, and the third is judiciary. And then lastly, we have the fourth estate. Usually it's the media, mainstream media. Now also the social media is being recognized as a force to reckon. So we really appreciate the presence of the media houses. K24 is in the house. Nawashukuru sana. We really appreciate the time that you have spent with us, and even in our previous events as well. As I had mentioned earlier on, the panel section of our forum is just to have an exchange of ideas, exchange of experiences, peers as well, because we may have peers as we are treading into this new language. I heard it mentioned that sign language is like a new language. It's like Sheng, you know. Sometimes you wouldn't know how to communicate in this way for you not to be misinterpreted. So it's new waters. There might be these fears. And I also like the attitudes and beliefs. Attitudes and beliefs. And then lastly, I also appreciate what the good professor mentioned, is that sometimes there might be conflict of ideology. Conflict of ideology, meaning opinions differ based on the background, based on experiences. So it's quite important to address some of these issues. And I would also love to hear, I don't know any one of us in the plenary, the crowd, who has a child or who has been a caregiver to a child who is deaf. If you, okay, there's one person, anyone else? Okay, yourself. Okay. I would appreciate, we might just refer to you once to hear maybe your story on exactly how that is, how that feels. I can imagine as a parent how that feels. So we'll also just call upon you once in a while to just hear your experiences. So I would like to be as open as possible. I have my able assistant here who has a mic as well. So if you have any questions, I had initially asked that you put them down or jot them or just have some memory of what you'd like to ask. This is how we are going to do it. Ask your question, frame your question. It should be framed as a question. And if it's a comment, mention it's a comment. Then secondly, keep it simple, right? Be as brief as possible, keep it simple. You can bring in the stories, we went, then we came down, then we appeared, and this is a question, but just keep it brief and simple. Thirdly, direct it to maybe one of the panelists who is in front of you, depending on their area of also expertise and the hats that they put on. So try and see who to focus on. But if we see that there can be too many questions directed to one person, we can be able to balance it. Are we together? If you understand me, just raise your hand so that I know that we are on the same page with the next process of discussion. Okay, very well. So the floor is open. Our panelists, kindly, we really would love to hear your side of the story. Your experiences as well were quite important for these ladies and gentlemen who are seated in front of you. So you're most welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lejo Manzare. I'm a Kenyan. I learn here in KISE. I have a question I want to ask our professor. It's 2 years when I joined KISE, but I have a question. I have a child. I did my exam, and when the results came, I was so much shocked. I failed the exam, and the problem was in NEC, whereby they were marking. They didn't pick me as a special student. My examination paper were put together with the hearing people, and when the result came, I was so much shocked. We did 4 papers, different subjects, but I passed 1 subject and I failed 3 subjects. So I was so much shocked. And when I told them to remark, it was so difficult for me to approach them. So I was requesting you as our spearhead, you go to NEC and request them to mark for us.
The young man asked me a question and told me that he did an exam and his paper was placed among others that were for hearing students. So they marked it wrongly and he gave him a bad grade. So I asked him to give me his NEC number, then I would follow up. Perhaps he can also give a comment.
Just to share with an experience in marking of exams. Before I used to mark KCPE, and during that time, KCPE that time, the deaf could only do 2 subjects, 2 languages, both Kiswahili and English. And they were performing so bad in Kiswahili because it is difficult for somebody to learn a language using another language. From my experience in teaching, when I used to teach Kiswahili, whenever I could teach a deaf student, Kikombe, he said, no, it is kapu. Because he already had mastered the concept of the cap. And he's associating that object with the cap, and it is called the cap. Now I'm bringing another language which is not using. Now when we are marking compositions, fortunately by those times these actions we are talking, we have gone far now to reach the level of sign language. Now they are examining their own language. The problem the professor said, KSL influence in English, signed English. If we could have been teachers could have been teaching them signed exact English, their writing could be the same as the normal English, but because they are taught in KSL or signed English, so normally their grammar is poor. So in this situation, when a marker is not exposed, that's why students should be registered Then a marker will just look at the language, then he will have an impression. The attitude my colleague was saying, the one I found on the attitude, this person has got poor English, so he has failed, but he's not looking inside the content. So that could have been one of the reasons why, if it was among the others, you know, the level of English, the flow, there's a challenge there, even professor can testify. But due to the background, because of language limitations, because I believe there's also an assessment, the ones I talked about being an assessment. There's prelingual deafness, what we call prelingual and postlingual. My friend professor is a postlingual. At least he could lip read. He struggled on his way to America. He could learn, but he could lip read English and make ends meet. But on the other hand, my Lenjo, my student, is prelingual. So even when he's trying to, and the teachers are different, the way they teach, he has gone through different schools, isn't it? Being taught some by deaf teachers, some by hearing teachers, and what the challenges Professor mentioned, there's still need for competency, even in terms of teaching of languages. There's still a lot, but Professor will take it forward, because I think there could also have been an oversight, because the package should have been packed differently, so that it is treated as, that option is there, because sometimes we admit maybe it was an oversight somewhere, but a student should be registered as a special so that everything is done specially. I'm talking now about assessment. You see, there are even some areas now, currently, when a student with deafness is asked the same question that this combination of this brings a hissing sound, so this, maybe in chemistry or in whatever. So already, as I said, that you started the curriculum at KICD, but nowadays KISE is a very key partner. Now we normally articulate with the secondaries, this CBC. That assessment mode should change, or the topic is eliminated if somebody is registered. So those are the things we are fighting for. Sorry for reacting too much, but I was just throwing light. Thank you.
Do we have any other question, maybe directed to the panelists? I think that was well addressed. I will ask this young man to share his question, and then there's a gentleman at the corner there, then you, and then we come to the back. So in that order, please, so that we can save on time. As soon as you ask your question, we get our answers and we move on. So we'll start with you. Yes, sir.
My name is Maxwell. I have two questions. Firstly, the question is directed to Professor Ndurumo. When I was a young person, I'm still young. I have two questions. One is directed to Professor Ndurumo. I'd just like to ask. So now the communication is visual, we interact, we communicate using KSL right now, using Kenyan Sign Language. So having listened to the old people who had developed the language a way back, it appears that they used sign language from other countries when they went back. So the old signs are there. But we see now we have forgotten those signs. So I don't know, whatever Professor Ndurumo made before in the KSL dictionary, the books that you had, are they using the old signs or have you integrated the current new signs? Because there's a slight confusion there. So I want a feedback from you. And then secondly, in the area of special needs, for instance, in the universities all over the schools that we have around, I don't know whether KSL has been integrated or not. Or perhaps sign language is learned there, because most government institutions, whenever deaf persons are teachers, maybe they look for people who have studied special needs education, then they are appointed to teach the deaf, but they don't know sign language. So I'm wondering, in the special needs, in the universities that train special needs, do they offer KSL as a separate unit? And how do we sort out that?
So the next question, and then we will address that one as well. So kindly just note that down, Professor, and then we can address them together. And I'd like to limit one question per participant, because I can see the questions that are coming in mind.
Yes, my name is Samson Oru. I work with Inclusivity, the leader of Kiage, and I'm here with my team. And oh, sorry. Hope you had, or okay. I'm also the chairman of Kenya Society for the Blind, and my question is as follows. You realize that deaf as a disability is the immediate sibling to blind people, and that's why we have deaf-blind as a separate kind of disability, and we even have a unit at Kilimani integrated program. But I was concerned about the development of the sign language, or the Kenya Sign Language, how it could take care of a deaf-blind student. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, one last question, and then we have the panelists address.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, there is a gentleman just before you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. So my name is Henry Maina. I'm from SDA Church. We have a deaf program there. So my question goes to Science TV. When I heard about Science TV, I was extremely happy, because I believe now it is possible for the deaf people to get the news directly using their first hand. I'm sorry, because I saw that the station is a bit low. They don't have news broadcasting, entertainment, they keep repeating the same programs. So I believe that many deaf are interested in watching mainstream media, just like Citizen TV, KTN, KBC, because those stations are good. They have education, sports, entertainment, and they're up to date. So I'm requesting Science TV, I'm asking Science TV, how can you make Science TV be educative, so that if it is a question of entertainment, it's up to date what you want. So the question is to you. You have employed a deaf journalists who go out there to collect news for sports and other different things. Or maybe you borrow news from other TV stations, from other media companies, and then you put them in Science TV. How do you do that? Or do you have your own products in the media? Do you write your own stories, or do you collect stories? Which way do you use? Because a person like me, I like for educative programs at my level, so that those are the things that can assist me more. And the entertainment bits by bits. So that's a question to you.
So panelists, over to you. I think we have some very, very good questions from the participants. Karibuni.
I will start because I have one question only.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Henry Maina, for your questions. Now, first of all, development of a TV station from scratch is a very expensive affair in which you need to put a lot of investments for you to get programming that gets to level whereby that quality programming, you really need to put a lot of investment. That's number one. Number two, you realize that we don't have in Kenya very many trained deaf journalists. So that inhibits the professionalism of even having to have deaf people to go out and collect news, because the government will ask you, are they licensed journalists? Then when they are not licensed, then it becomes a problem to have a deaf out there to go and collect journalists. But again, the good thing is we've been able to talk to Kenya Institute of, it's called what? KMC, Kenya Institute of Mass Communication, in which they are ready to offer any deaf person who would like to go there and actually want to do journalism as a course. So I encourage deaf people to go to KIMC and get these qualifications, and we are ready to employ you so that you can actually have this programming in a more professional way. The other issue is Science TV, as you've seen, we actually take care of all the disabilities. So we have deaf, we have visually impaired, we have physical disability. So we bring all these people together with the few deaf that we've been able to employ, we're able to bring them. And programming, yes, we go out and get our own content that we are able to put it on Science TV. But again, I've told you, it's a very expensive affair, and I would like to encourage the deaf people to take journalism as a course. And as Prof was saying, train them in it's called universal access in terms of a language that journalists actually is able to use in the field for purposes of creating news. Remember, you have to broadcast within the ethical code of broadcasting. If you don't just say anything on TV because you are feeding out the population. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered your question.
I'll answer the question from my colleague, my friend from Vision 2030. I forgot your name. Waweru. From Vision 2030, it is about deaf blind. Deaf blind, I just want to give you a bit of history. How KISE came on board. When KISE was brought on board, started in 1986, it started with only 4 disability areas. The fourth one was brought, if you remember Professor saying, there was no physical handicap or physical challenge. The terminologies have changed. Physical impairment, physical challenge, physical handicap. Now it was brought as the fourth. Get it? Disability area. But as I'm talking now, and that is the area that KISE's mandate is to do what? Train teachers to teach these learners. KISE's mandate is to carry out research in collaboration with other bodies. KISE's mandate is to work with KICD on the curriculum to educate these learners, and also NEC on how to examine these learners, because every learner we have equal, isn't it? There should be no segregation, inclusivity. Now, as we were developing the next line, out of this 13 disability, we have deaf blind. Deaf blind is a separate. You can't say deaf and blind. It is deaf blind. Once a child is assessed with deaf blind, it's like the same hearing. We don't say all hearing impaired persons, deaf people, they don't hear at all. Their hearing varies, isn't it? Even a deaf blind is somebody who has got visual impairments, which of varying degrees, either totally means blind completely, and hearing. Now, you talked of Kilimani. Kilimani is one of the units that we have around in Nairobi, catering for those children. But we also have schools. We have the first school that is known as Kabarnet School for Deaf Blind, with so many students who are deaf blind. Now we have units, and the funny thing, most of these units, like the one in Kilimani, they are located in hearing impaired schools. We have one in Kerugoya, in Kwale School for the Deaf, Maseno School for the Deaf. Almost all these schools for the deaf are coming up with deaf-blind programs. The main problem, because like our hearing impaired, we normally say the main problem with our hearing impaired, they're very normal, except communication barrier. Where that communication he was talking about, communication is exchange of information, ideas, messages, na kadhalika. Sindio? If you can exchange, I tell this my friend like this, I'm using a language, you tell him, that is gestures, isn't it? Then we can also have the stand, isn't it? Stand up. It can be in different forms. Now, a language, we must use a language to communicate. You get it? So, for this deaf-blind, because they are also having communication, let's talk about a child who does not see at all and does not hear at all. Let's put ourselves in that total, isn't it? Total blind, I'm a total deaf. Deaf-blind, who does not see at all, and he needs to be communicated. That's how we come up with tactual signs. Their signs are now different from the sign language, because this one is a visual. This one you must see the language. A, B, my name is D, A, N. That is visual. But that one now is tactual. There's a way now those children are trained on one-to-one. I have a teacher from Kilimani, Jane, my former colleague. Jane, can you stand up? So, HOD in KISE, head of Department of Hearing Impaired and Communication. Deaf-blind class, I now have about 14 students who are doing deaf-blind. They are under me. I have hearing impaired, I have KSL. So thank you. Have I answered you? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Was there another question that has not been addressed? Yeah, the gentleman, yes. Professor, there was a question that was thrown your way, and then I'll have the gentleman
I have
with
two
the African
questions
print.
From, you asked me two questions, right?
Correct.
The first question was about the old and new KSL, is that right? And that in the past, in 1980s, there were more KSL signs, water, but today, the few and more are new. Meaning that here, our new book, we have more signs that are not KSL. This happened and the people who brought this were young people who went to school and they watched films and they watched YouTube. They borrowed a lot. That means that the old signs in the past have reduced. I cannot think of, I'm trying to think of some signs that we used to use in the past. For example, let me show you this sign. The old sign for Kisumu was Kisumu. Is that right? And now it's Kisumu. Why is this? That was the signs for 1970s. 1970s, when the children from Mumias left to go to Kisumu, their bus used to have a lot of flashlights. And at night they would use the flashlight. That's how they used to follow the bus sign. But today, our bus do not have such. So they changed it to K, meaning just Kisumu. That is how the change came in. Some other signs like Machakos, the sign is Machakos. The reason was because of carving, the carving. So they changed and added M to show Machakos. Like Kitui, because of some there who had a gap on their teeth, so they signed Kitui. So we picked the sign Kitui, but nowadays we have changed it to Kitui with a K. The other, we have another one saying Kitui, so we are also changing. It's people from there. They brought in other signs like Nyeri. Before it was Nyeri because of the mountains, and now that they changed it to Nyeri because of Kibaki, because of the north. So you're the people who are changing, not us. So you're bringing it to us. So some are made up by young people or old people. So the point here is sign language is dynamic. We cannot keep the old ones here. Mumias now, the sign is still Mumias. Why? Because of they grew sugarcane and the way it was harvested. So that's why we get the sign Mumias. Perhaps in future it'll change to M, perhaps Mumias, you never know. Is that okay? The second question, you asked the second question, why are the teachers in schools for the deaf do not know sign language? Where are they posted there and did not say sign language? Perhaps you can answer that question.
Thank you for the second question, but I just want to add something also. I'm always a good researcher. There is a stem, because sign for fish, we can sign it. So one sign for fish is like this, another one is like this, like a tail, and then there's also the sign for fishing, isn't it? How to fish. And then there's a sign for the small fish. Are you seeing some interest? Now, we also have signs for names. And one thing I normally tell people in my teaching, any initialized signs, because we didn't have A's, I in our Kenyan Sign Language, is, are, will. But some of these, they are called conjunctions or what? They must be used, isn't it? And they must be initialized to bring that is when it is going forward, I is when So initialization of signs, according to my research, is from America, and it was brought by people like Ndurumo, my friend professor. And to make signs easier, to make dynamism, it's true. Because the origin is in America. In America, they sign boy like this. Ours is a young boy like this, isn't it? But now there are signs that for our Kenyan, we have to go agree as a Kenyan society, because our language is culturally must be agreed by a committee. And we are talking about the Kenyan community or society. We agree to use this sign. That's why there's a lot of dynamism. I personally, Sheng, we are the people who started Sheng, 70s when we were in school. Schooling in Nairobi, Buddha, Njaro, police, we had the names, but because it has changed. Now this Sheng, when what was younger Sheng, Ndudi was not there, Ndudi came. Now it is called Ndudi. Maybe it will keep on changing. A dynamic language is a growing language because it is opening other stems for others. We can't stick to the same stem to sign everything. My friend, professor today, learned about the stem signs. Every day is a learning opportunity. So that stem sign can bring others up. And I said, sign language started just the other day, 1776, by Dilepe. When our professor went there, he brought, after big controversy, are we together? Big controversy of let it be speaking the way he narrated himself. I had talked before him. I'm a good student of him, and I admired. We have even, in Kenya, he's another Dilepe, he's another Gallaudet, because we are soon having a university for the deaf in Kenya. If you did not mention it, this is a great fella, because we only have 35 graduates, and also we want to open opportunities. We also have deaf lawyers, because there's nothing, disability is not inability. Are you getting it? Are we together somewhere? So, the science must have dynamism, because if you talk of Machakos, Kamba is the same sign. So you don't know whether it's a Kamba sign or Machakos. So Machakos must have M to bring the difference of that Kambaness of carving wood. You get it? So these are things that are developing, and that's why I was saying this is a growing language. If you are in it, you will have to grow with it. Now the second question. It was about teachers. KISE, even my deaf-blind students, Once we train them, they are supposed to be posted in either unit. A unit is where the children go day, come back. Or a special school where they are there, those ones with very severe cases, and they must get services in those schools. Or maybe in units or inclusive integrated programs like in Kilimani. They learn in the normal what? The inclusivity is talking about. When he was removed from Dagoretti special, which is still a composition of 4 disability areas, there's PH, there's MH, there's HI. That unit where he learned, he went back to the normal school, which is like integration, isn't it? To fight on his own way. Picking from his history. We have, I don't want to mention, we have come up with programs that inclusion, where you have all types of disabilities in some of our schools, where they're losing even meaning. You go, you find them, those ones we shall tackle at our own level. So, inclusivity means a normal person with a disability. They work together so that that segregation, that attitude is eliminated, isn't it? Not putting different disabilities together and then talk of include. That one, because I'm an assessor. Just 2 months ago, I was the head of all this for years. But because of demand and local internal reshuffles by the cabinet, now my knowledge is needed the other side because of training. We train teachers. Teachers who have trained for 2 years diploma are supposed to go to special schools to serve these children, but we end up, that is now beyond us as KISE, our employer, the TSC. Once we hand them back the teachers we have trained, I'm talking now on behalf of my director, it is the responsibility of the TSC to post these teachers to the school based on the demand. But some of these teachers end up going back to the same schools they came from. Others in the wrong areas, they have been trained. We have those cases. It's not, but with the forum now among parents, stakeholders, it is also your right, isn't it? For your teachers to be taught by the right. We have a thorough training. We train the correct way, but our teachers end up, once we hand them back to the employer, it is not our business as KISE. Even me, I'm employed by TSC. If they decide today I live here, I go to an MH school, I'll go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hwaga, for that detailed answer to the question. I hope they're being addressed, your questions are being addressed in the correct way. So we'll have a second round of question and answer session. Okay, we just had the first round, and I can see it's taking some good time. So we'll have the second and last round of the question and answer session, because it's already heading to 2 o'clock. And this might pose a challenge to even our panelists and ourselves. So let's keep the questions short and simple. I am still encouraging you to send the photos. We have some quick prizes for those who have sent the photos to the hashtags that we had put up there. So second round of questions, keep it simple. We'll start with this gentleman here. Yes, sir. No, the gentleman there. Then we'll have the gentleman in yellow. Then this gentleman here. And a comment from her. Are we together in that order? Just keep your questions very brief. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Jeff Mweri from the University of Nairobi, Kenya Sign Language Project. I like to call myself a teacher by profession and a linguist by training. And one of the languages that I deal with is Kenyan Sign Language. Now, from Professor's presentation, I have a comment which maybe lead to a question, briefly. My knowledge of linguistics tells me that a language thrives when it has a community of users. And that is how KSL has thrived. Now, when you talk about Kenyan Signed English, my question is, who are the users of this Kenyan Signed English? Because as a language demands or needs to have a community of users for it to be able to thrive and develop. Kenya Signed English, on the other hand, our question is, who are the users of that Kenya Signed English? That is one question. Secondly, when you talk about inclusivity, when it comes to persons with disability and the deaf in particular, are we advocating for getting deaf children to so-called normal schools? Or are we saying that inclusivity in schools, we can have what we call inclusivity in exclusivity, in the sense that we can still have deaf children in schools for the deaf, but we open up their world by providing the correct education. I think that is more of including them than forcing them to go to normal schools or units for the deaf, where there is very little learning that is taking place there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Nyatich from KISE, and my concern, I would like to share just a brief experience on the academic performance of the deaf individuals. At a certain school, I came to realize that on the issue of signing exact English, you realize that I did an observation at a certain high school whereby students who were actually signing exact English, or who had who are very well conversant with signing exact English, were performing higher than students who were conversant with KSL. And I will just wish to seek the opinion of the professor and maybe Mr. Hwaga. What are your view on inclusivity towards KSL towards inclusion, so that those students who are signing exact English are able, they are the one actually who are progressing very highly towards university. And the other concern I wish to challenge us, because we are also champions for KSL, maybe in the future even we can push towards having a national signing day, where even people even can even use Cassius or national day, whereby everybody will be signing, so that we have inclusion for the deaf. Thank you so much.
Hello, good afternoon. So my name is Amos. I'd like to pose a question. You see the new curriculum that we have a new curriculum. And the deaf have been lobbying about the issues of the teachers who teach the deaf children in primary schools. Perhaps the curriculum, the new curriculum, does it have KSL? What does it insist on? Good afternoon. My name is Chris. I have a question to the professor. I see a weakness in the schools for the deaf children, and even the high schools. The government has been posting teachers to teach the deaf children, but after 5 years of teaching sign language, they are put and dispatched to schools for the deaf. So there's a weakness there. So there's no strong development because the teachers keep on changing. I would prefer that the deaf learn the science, the teachers learn the science, and then they go to the schools rather than just moving them that is not preferable. The government needs to be posting teachers to teach the deaf sign language, not moving them and changing them. So maybe TSC can do that.
I think that's the last question we have.
There are so many questions, and I'll start with my friend's doctor from University of. I just want to mention an area on inclusivity, segregation. When Professor started here about this environment, he posed a question on design, isn't it? Inclusivity starts with the design. Even in a normal classroom, where the hearing people are, can be designed in such a way, designed in terms of maybe students, assist peer assist, who have learned sign language. And I just want to say, like, there are programs we started of Kenyan Sign Language clubs, like school is doing. Then we also have Kenyan Sign Language. We have opened it as an examination to any child living in a normal school. So that once they learn sign language, I personally am always proud of a school called Ngeng. It used to be a physically handicapped unit. When I went and looked at that facility, I started with 2 deaf boys. Whether you are deaf, whether you are hearing, you must be trained. P1 is not training for a particular, but KISE again, we train them for specific disabilities, how to handle these learners. So those teachers who just went because they are deaf to those schools, yes, they have the sign language, but they are lacking pedagogies of teaching method and so many things of handling learners with what? That's why the in-service that Dr. incorporated that KISE to merge. And initially you must have taught for how many years? 3. Nowadays it is 5 under TSC because of logistics. It was 3 years teaching first. Then you come now to train for that special child, which we do. Now that one can be posted. But if a deaf teacher is here, like my friend Lenjo, that's why she was pointing at her interpreter. They are assigned because KISE we are disability, for inclusivity. They attend the normal lectures. Now you only have to change the environment for inclusive, and he participate. And he even won in drama. That's why I believe he's a very bright person. Lenjo scored position 1 in drama festivals, isn't it? Among the colleges, even the hearing, they were competing together. So maybe I've answered. So the deaf teachers in lower wards, a teacher should be trained for that class. And CBC is coming now with specialists for each level. The I teacher, the middle school teacher, the whatever. So maybe that's my contribution. Unless you are not satisfied, the person who asks, you can still rephrase the question so that you get it right.
Dr. Jeff, you asked me a question, and I have analyzed this issue for very many years. And when I present my paper, I said that we, the teachers of the deaf, we need to think deaf. That means that KSL is, that means KSL remains. We do not have to remove it. We can keep it. And KSL is accepted in low classes. You teach KSL, as you move on, you move to Kenyan Signed English. You have asked about the community. We have a community here, but deaf people are not one group. We are different people. Deaf people who are born deaf. We have deaf people with different degrees of hearing loss, and so on. We cannot all be combined in one. And I'm trying my best to analyze this issue through, and it is coming up in my book. From this side, we call it pre-Kenya Sign Language. it is more gestures. Then next, it is based at home where the parents do not know sign language. Then we have here, it existed during the oral method. At that time, we were not allowed to use sign language. Then we have, it is used by deaf people who have not been to school. Then here, it can be used by deaf people who become deaf later in life, but have not learned sign language. So this is the gesture. The next one is Kenyan Sign Language. We call it KSL. We are not dealing in it. We are not denying its existence. We respect it. It evolved in schools for the deaf. It is not home. It is not a mother tongue. Because here, parents do not know sign language. So when the child moves to the school for the deaf, that is where they learn KSL. So emphasis is on pure KSL approach. It avoids English words like is, are, we say we. Then, it is mostly used by prelingual deaf people. So we are not removing it. That is a respected language. But as we move on with education, this is not going to be the key thing in schools, but it remains in the deaf community. I am part of the deaf community and I use it and integrate with them very well. So looking at it from this point, then we have KSL, stroke, Kenya Signed English. It is an in-between. It is a mix of KSL and signed stamp. It happens after grade 3. When I was in school myself, before I became deaf, I was taught in Kikuyu up to class 3 at that time. After class 3, we moved on to use English. So that is the same concept and approach we are using here. And if you're a teacher of the deaf, then this is how it looks. That is, if you like, you can read that, the different kinds. And now, we keep talking about SEE. I am not for SEE. I am not for signed exact English. I'm not for signed exact English. We have seeing essential English. The two are different. But here, SEE is very demanding. Every word must be said. I am going to school. Every small word has to be said. And here is also different. That is this seeing essential English. The two, this is called SEE1 and this is SEE2. I had professors from all these areas, and I had a professor of linguistics who taught me ASL, which here we call KSL. I had a professor of signed English, Professor Boardingstein. He taught me. Then I had another professor, a lady who came up with sign exact English. She died recently.
These two mainly is for schools. Seeing essential English is very difficult. We cannot use it here in Kenya, and I am not advocating for it. For example, the word understand. How many words are in it? How many words? 2. If you take it concretely, how do you sign it? Under and then stand. Does it make sense? That means we'll be teaching wrong concept to the children. That will be wrong. That is why that was SEE1, and now we have SC2. The people who are in this, they separated themselves and moved to SEE2 because they did not agree with that philosophy. Understand does not make sense. Understand. And here, understand. All the 4 is also understand. It's something that we need to internalize. I have analyzed this very much, and I came up with a book. It covers all this. It is in chapter 17. I'm trying to clarify some issue in deaf education. But your question is, who are the users? KSL is used by deaf people in the community. And again, we are a member of 2 communities, not 1. I am a member of 3 worlds or more. I am a deaf person. That is my community. I use KSL. When I leave and go to school here, I use Kenya Signed English. And here, when I'm communicating with you, I'm using Kenya Signed English. It is not SE, because we have some elements in KSC that are not in SEE. I may not have answered you, but that is my philosophy. You can teach KSL up to class 3 or 4. After that, you move to use Kenya Signed English, so that the deaf child can be able to write in English. But at the low level, you use KSL, and that in another way, gestures, pointing, you drink, you sleep. But that is pre-KSL. Let me say for short that KSL, let me say this this issue how KSL and KSE and so on has been there for very many years. Even in America, even today, they're still fighting over the same. We have groups, we have not solved it. We have 2 groups. We are still going on. It depends on your philosophy. I wish that I would have more time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor, for that candid explanation. Yeah, let's just appreciate the panelists who are in front of us. They have spoken their hearts out, shared some of the things that are also ongoing. Professor mentions that there's a book that is coming out, able to explain some of the things that were being addressed here. Thank you so much, participants, for sharing your questions and your comments. I'm excited that there's a lot of passion in sign language. We also, with the deaf, also people living with disabilities, and just trying to ensure that we all are able to communicate, right? And I want to thank you also at the same time. Our time is so much past what we had anticipated. I feel like there's so much to be discussed. And I feel that we need another forum, right? So, Slick, I think you have opened a new path in discussions surrounding sign language and all that is associated with people living with disability, special needs as well. I think there's a lot to be discussed. So I don't want to take any more of your time, right? I honestly would like to just thank Slick as well for having us here this morning to the afternoon. I would like to thank KISE as well for opening up their doors for Slick and all of us to have this forum. I'd like to thank the Communication Authority as well. We have apologies. He had to leave a bit early because he was representing the director in another forum. I'll also really, really appreciate the Sign TV as well. Thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. I would like to thank each and every one of you. Professor, thank you so much also for just creating time. I feel like we have engaged you the entire day. It's a blessing to just have you part and parcel of this discussion. And everybody else, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for participation, the photos as well. I promise that we have some prize for those who took some quick photos and sent them to our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, right? We have some quick presents. I would like to hand over the mic to this able-bodied person here.
Yes, so I'm called Vincent Mwando, and I'm a...
Embrace the crowd.
Okay. Yes, I'm called Vincent Mwando, and I'm a champion for sign language. And I want to make sign language to be cool just as other language like Sheng and stuff. So thank you so much for your presence. So most of us engaged in the online platform, and we're just speaking at random according to the likes and those who just got engaged in the online platform. So we are sorry about the Wi-Fi. Sorry for those who expected Wi-Fi. We were not given the details, so we are sorry about that. So just matter of time, we have Maureen Kaniri. Maureen Kaniri.
Maureen Kaniri, if she's not here, I will take it from her.
Maureen Kaniri. Okay, the second.
Who knows her?
Okay, if she does not call, if she's not here, when she comes back, tell her to. When she comes back with her account, then we can know who she is. Then the second person, Janet Nyaboke. Yes, congratulations. So I'll just give this to our founder to give you this credit. Yeah. Come on, yes. Clap for her as she comes. Yeah, Twitter, actually Twitter. Yes. Yes. And please remember when you go back home, keep on using this, the hashtags given. Yeah, we may even pop in one day and just call you and say that by they come for a present. Then we have Maureen Izaura. Maureen Izaura, oh, congratulations, clap for her. So I would give one of the members of the panelists to be just award her at least, yes. 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 Anyone posting currently? Anyone posting? Anyone posting currently? Okay. Yes. So thank you so much, and keep on sharing on the social websites. And if you have any question, please just feel free to ask. Do you have an email address? Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. 24 hours. We'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, nashukuru sana. Let us just appreciate those who participated. I told you, some of you were just smiling and didn't take action. You're sitting on your dream, and you do not want to manifested. This is what happens. You are left out totally. So thank you so much for participating. As we conclude, I just want to mention that there is some tea and snack on your way out. Okay, so take time, interact. I know we don't have more time, but just talk to each other, exchange contacts, networks. We might be meeting very, very soon. And with that, I would like to just ask Maxwell, yes, if you know your Maxwell, to come and just give a quick vote of thanks. Yeah, a quick vote of thanks. And then we will close with a word of prayer. So let us, Maxwell is a bit shy, usually. Okay.
So my name is Maxwell. I'm a member of SLEEK. Just like to say, I'm extremely happy to see everyone gathered in this presence, all the invited people, friends of KISE, sign language students, and all different people came here, including the sign language interpreters who trooped in here. I'm very, very happy, greatly happy. Visitors who came, the panelists who came to share their ideas with us, to support us, and the questions that we gave out here and the answers that we are given, and everything. Thank you so much. And also, not forgetting Diana for the support that she has given us, the idea of bringing on board SLEEK. Sign language is cool, it's motivating. So thank you so much, Diana. May God bless you. Amen. And the many deaf people who came here to join us, to support us and the hearing people, thank you so much. Applause to you. And other invited friends and people who are doing the registration and serving us, we applaud them too. And also the invited ones who missed, we go and tell them. So now, I'd just like to thank you for everything, the program that we had, and not talk more, but just to thank God for the guidance, for guiding us to go on well. So I hope that we are going to continue well, we are going to be together, and we are going to attain our goal. So now, shall we pray? I think we need to stand because most of you will be straining to see. Or maybe if you stand, you may block people, maybe you can sit, so sorry.
I'm sorry, Maxwell. There are some few people just to give thanks as well. They are here. I'd like to just give thanks to a very special person, to Diana. Diana's mother is actually here. The mom came all the way from Makuyu. So let's just thank her for just giving us this wonderful daughter. She's here with a few of her friends supporting her daughter. So thank you so much, Mom, for showing up. And also Diana's husband is in the crowd there. So thank you so much as well. We really appreciate the support that you continue giving us family. It's very important. Yeah. So I think those are 3, 4 people that I really wanted to appreciate. So sorry, Maxwell.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you, God, for everything, from the time we started from morning all the way to afternoon, the program that we had, and everything that we did to see to it that it happened. So thank you for blessing us with this program. Many visitors trooped in this place with the objective of listening about the issue of sign language and the programs about sign language is cool. We came and listened, so now we have benefited. And the benefit came from the presenters that we had here. There was a discussion as we retreat to our homes and our different destinations of work. Remember us, keep us in your hearts, and whatever we tried, we learned here, let us implement them. Let us gain the motivation to join the sign language places. Let us join us in communication so that we remove the communication barrier so that we can understand this as a language, because it's a gift from you, God, and it's awesome. So may you help us, God, to think through the steps that you're going to do to ensure our language grows. Thank you so much, Lord. And as we go back, may we go together in a good way. And the visitors, the dignitaries who came, they have given us wisdom. Help us to implement whatever we have discussed. And also, Diana here, and other different things, may you give her wisdom, because her idea is great. You gifted her with the idea to open this path. So she used it in a wonderful and awesome way. Thank you, Lord, for everything. As we follow the steps that you're going to act, you're going to go with the ideas that we had, but you're going to follow. We want you to guide us, follow us. As we have completed our programs and as we'll be going back, completing everything in the remaining of the day, may you bless us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
What he used was pure KSL. That is it. That is the KSL. We have not lost it, it's here. What I'm using here is Kenya Signed English, and you're using pure KSL.
Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have been your MC, Martin Juma. It was a pleasure.
Okay.
Let's move towards the right. Take time and know your neighbor. Share contacts. Please make a friend.